Hello. Hello. My hope is to one day sing a song so beautifully, so perfectly, so lovely at the beginning of this cast that I get a copyright strike. Neartech? Neartech in early. Good to see you. Neartech? Are you new? Am I forgetting? I feel like my brain is just in a mushy place right now. XD, good to see you. Wednesday is like my holy day of sacredness. It's what it's become. And I for sure spent like 2 hours on the beach, just staring at the sky, talking to the creator, living, breathing, and I gotta tell you, it was truly great. It was truly great. It was magnificent. I went to the gym yesterday and did leg day, and so my legs are not sore, but they're tired. Boy, howdy, was walking around. I was walking around like an old man the whole day, and I just embraced it. I was like, this is what it's going to be like being 80. I'm going to move like this. This is how it's going to feel. It was okay. It was okay. It was nice. Today was a beautiful day, a nice day, a lovely day. It was really cold in the morning, and now it's gotten hot enough that I've got my fan going. So if you guys notice a change in the audio quality, let me know if you feel like the audio quality is bad, because I've got a fan going over here, and that might be the culprit. If not, then totally fine. And of course, I got my little pooch Milo, sitting right here, snoozing away. So today's a good day. And maybe it's my high spirits, maybe it's my good mood that's making me feel this way, but it does feel like all the news that is coming out is, like, hilarious. Like, it seems so horrible, seems so horrifying, I suppose. But, like, I guess it's just hard to take these people seriously anymore. You know what I mean? Like, you've got Admiral John C. Aquilino, commander of the United States Indo-Pacific Command. And this guy's saying their economy is failing, but boy, are their military spending is concerning. Their economy's going to the toilet even though they're increasing spending on military. Like, let's see. The increase in China's defense spending is concerning, given its economy is failing, the head of the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command said on Tuesday. Speaking to reporters in Tokyo, Admiral John Aquilino said China's economy has been battered by turmoil in its real estate sector and asserted that its official growth rates were not real. He also said China was spending drastically more on its military than the 7.2% increase it declared last month. Source, trust me, bro. Right? Just trust me, bro. Yeah. What's my source for that? I got a gut. I'm going with my gut. Heh. Despite a failing economy, there's a conscious decision to fund military capability. That's concerning to me, said Aquilino, who is due to leave his post next month. So the dude's literally walking out the door just being like, China's lying about everything it's saying. And I got no evidence or facts, and their economy's failing even though it's doing better than ours. He also criticized China's increasingly aggressive rhetoric and actions in the South and East China Seas, specifically around the disputed Second Thomas Shoal and Taiwan. You know, their territory. As it applies specifically to Taiwan, I am watching an increasingly aggressive campaign plan of coercion and pressure, he said. Yes, how dare they be coercive and exert pressure on their own territory? Why are you even there, bro? What are you even doing over there? What are you even hanging out in that area for? right? You guys are over there pretending like it's American territory, and the Chinese are like, yeah, Taiwan has been ours. Like, you guys said so since the 60s, at least. It's like total clown shoes, right? This economic illiterate, and this guy's an admiral. Like, this guy's at the top of the chain. And he, in this article alone, forget about, like, continued articles, he's showing us that he's economically illiterate. He has no fucking idea what's going on in terms of economics. And he's willing to make just big, gigantic, grand statements and proclamations with a big old, trust me, bro, attached to them. Like, this is the military command in the United States. No wonder they lose every war they fight. The Chinese foreign minister did not immediately respond to Reuters' request for a comment. Yeah, I can't imagine why. A top Chinese military leader told a gathering of senior foreign naval officials this week that China remains committed to resolving maritime disputes with other countries through dialogue, but will not allow itself to be abused. Yeah, like a normal thing. Right? America only finds this kind of rhetoric to be, like, outlandish. What was the exact language this fucking this lunatic gave? Coercion and pressure. Yes, increasingly aggressive rhetoric and actions. Right? You only consider people saying, like, hey, we have the right to, like, be in our own territory in our own region. You only consider that to be aggressive, right, if you are a bully. Right? Like, somebody saying, like, hey, I should be respected and I shouldn't have to make decisions under threat of military. Thanks, United States. Yeah, the only people who have a problem with that are bullies. Aquilino also labeled North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's regime disgusting for spending on its military even as the country has grappled with food shortages. Ooh, let's go to the link. Grappled with food shortages. Source required. What's the source? It's Reuters. So they source themselves. North Korea defectors cite dwindling food rations. Let's pull this thread, guys. Let's do it. I'm in a silly mood. Boy, am I in a silly mood. Who wants to put money on the table? Who wants to put money on the table? This leads to Radio Free Asia. Who wants to put money on the table that this leads to Radio Free Asia? Who wants to think? Here we go. Here we go. We're going to do it. We're going to go like this. We're going to go like this. We're going to go to my bookmarks. Going to open this guy here. This is going to be us reading the article that Reuters itself linked as a source to North Korea's dwindling food rations. North Korea defectors. Okay. The majority of North Koreans who resettled in South Korea over the last decade said they never received government rations in the isolated slate and had to rely on an informal market to survive. A study issued by Seoul's Unification Ministry showed. So it's literally the South Koreans saying this of North Korea. Who resettled in South Korea over the last decade said they never received government rations in the isolated state. The 280-page report on North Korea's economic and social situation issued on Tuesday was based on interviews with more than 6,300 defectors between 2013 and 2022. The ministry began such surveys in 2010, but it's the first time the results have been publicly released. Oh, that's interesting, actually. North Korea has faced serious food shortages in recent decades, including a famine in the 1990s, often exacerbated by natural disasters. Its economy has been hit by international sanctions as well as slumping border trade during the pandemic. More than 72% of defectors who arrived between 2016 and 20 said they never received government food rations in North Korea, compared with 62% of those who came before 2000. About half of the arrivals said they did not receive any salaries from food or work, up from about a third. Wow, this is actually pretty comprehensive. I'm shocked, actually, I have to say. Here I was being like, Radio Free Asia, this is going to be bullshit. And it's like less bullshitty. It's still pretty bullshitty because it's all just like people who are leaving the country talking a big game to the people they want to impress, right? Like, it's not like the greatest way to collect information, right? The people who are leaving the country said something bad about it while they left. That's how we should base our opinion of a country, for sure. We shouldn't actually listen to the people who are living in the country. we shouldn't go into that country and actually like talk to the people who live there and get their perspective. No, we should only listen exclusively to the people who leave and believe what they say completely 100% as they try to impress their new country of origin, right? Like, what are they going to do? They're going to come over to South Korea and be like, I'm leaving this country and coming to this new country, and this new country is stupid. Really think they're going to do that? No. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm in such a silly mood. All right. Dang it. I would have lost this bet. Somebody should have taken me up on that bet. I would have lost. I would have lost good money to you. I would have e-transferred you $10 right now. I would have lost that bet. But you guys thought it was going to be Radio Free Asia as well. You all know it's true. But, like, it's all clown shoes, right? Blinken says genocide in Xinjiang is ongoing and report ahead of China visit. Literally, the guy is overseeing genocide in Gaza. Just like a massive bloodletting that's constantly going on, an enormous massacre. And he has the audacity, while he's committing a genocide in Gaza, and completely committed to doing so, to blame China for having an ongoing genocide that they don't have any evidence of and nobody can see. Like, it's crazy. Eric, good to see you. Did you hear about GW changing the lore of the custodians to say female? I don't care. I saw this, and I saw that the internet was having a shit about it. Henry Cavill is going to leave the project. For those of you who don't know what we're talking about, so Henry Cavill, right, who's like handsome nerd, right? He's the nerd that made it, right? Henry Cavill, Nesper over on Twitch. Good to see you, my man. They wanted to include a female Custodes, right, which is not part of the lore and blah, 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 right? And they wanted to have a female Custodes. And Henry Cavill was like, I'm going to leave the project if you do that. And it's like, just like mouth-breathing nerdery to the highest possible fucking level. And it's just like, and in my opinion, it's like mouth-breathing nerdery on all sides. Like, who cares? Who cares? Who cares? Tell good stories. I don't understand why this is so difficult for these idiots to do. They've got their heads in their asses across the entire table, across the entire board, right? The second you step into any of these institutions, they're all dumb. They're all morons and they have no fucking idea what they're doing. They're hyper-focused on nonsense that doesn't matter when they've got this enormous problem in front of them, which is how do you tell a good story? And instead of being interested at all in telling a good story and having a good story to tell, they're interested in this tokenism game and this like, we'll put a woman in and that'll attract women to our fucking Warhammer movie. Like, what are you talking about? Like, what are you talking about? Your logic is so dumb in the first place, right? Like, this is a movie for like hyper nerds. For like the hyper nerds, right? Like, this is like Star Wars nerd thinks the Warhammer nerds are nerds, right? Like, Star Wars and Star Trek nerds think Warhammer nerds are nerds, right? You understand how deep into the nerdosphere we're going with this one? That just because one handsome man in Hollywood, Henry Cavill, plays Warhammer doesn't mean that it's suddenly this mainstream crazy thing. And the idea that they're trying to like even infuse this, the like bottom of the step in the basement of nerddom, one step up from being a furry, one step up from having like a pride in your stamp collection, right? Like, it's like taking your stamp collection and then playing a game with your stamp collection, right? It's like having a coin collection, except you make each individual coin, and each coin is important not because it comes from a place of like genuine historical merit, but because you invented a lore surrounding it. Like, it's just like, it's like the fact that even there, even here, in a place that should just be untouched by all of this shit, it's literally just men in power suits shooting. Get the Tyranid for the glory of the Emperor! That even there, we're having this pathetic ridiculous, absurdist, absolutely fucking stupid, ridiculous conversation, right? Like, Space Marines are white supremacist bigots. They're space racists. They're supposed to be space racists, right? Like, that's the whole thing. That's the satire of the Warhammer universe. Is that the Space Marines are not... Oh my god! What have I been saying on this channel for forever? What have I been saying on this channel for forever? They're gonna present satire to us as normal. That they're gonna present Warhammer to us like we're supposed to watch it and be like, that's cool. That's the space future. Space future is space Nazism. The Custodes are space Nazis. Like, the Space Marines are space Nazis. That's the joke. Warhammer is a satire. It's a satirical parody of Empire. That's what it always has been. Except now in recent years, everybody has seems to forget that. And now the parody is the thing. And so they're going to present it to us as if we're all supposed to be like, oh, wow, those space Nazis, man. I can't wait for my son to join the space Nazis. Like, it is like when people watch Starship Troopers and are, like, on board with it. When people watch Starship Troopers. What are you talking about, Nesper? Or Nepser? This guy's on Twitch and he's just like... But it's like, the big reason it connects to communism is because the society has become so incapable of understanding that it itself is fascist that it wants to normalize it. It constantly is in this position of normalizing fascism. And so now it's going to make a movie where the people it's following are explicitly fascists. Like, the Space Marines in the Warhammer universe are fascists. Right? That's their whole shtick. They're fascists. But now they're trying to do all kinds of things to soften them. To make them... So they're trying to infuse the space fascists with some neoliberal rhetoric. Right? Get some DEI in there, and that'll make it more palatable. People will accept the space fascists more easily if there are women and people of color. Let's make all of the fascists a multicultural diversity squad, and that means that their fascism will be acceptable. Everybody will be like, oh boy, I'm so glad that I'm being ruled by fascists. I don't understand some people, man. Good to see you, Compton. But it's just like... Yeah, of course the Starship Trooper captain's opinion on China is the one we must listen to, yeah. Honestly, dude, like, Blinken would be cooler if he was the Starship captain, right? Like, it would actually be, I'd respect them a lot more if they just stood up and were like, we're here to destroy China because they're weaker than us. Be like, oh, okay, here we go. Like, just like, honesty, finally. Instead, it's all this, like, nonsense bullshitting. Gabriel, good to see you. Dragon Fruit. Biden signed the dumbass TikTok ban that also contained a shit ton of money to Ukraine and Israel and Taiwan in the same bill. Gotta love our openly corrupt government officials. Yeah, guys. It's coming. Like, it's coming. Right? Like, we are headed for a major offensive. Right? Like, that's what this bill is going to do. It's going to give a lot of money to Ukraine, a lot of money to Israel, and a lot of money to Taiwan. And the result of that is going to be offensives in Rafah. The Ukrainians are going to try to put up some kind of offensive somewhere. The Ukrainian war is, like, especially dumb. Like, because that's over. Like, they can't recover. right? The Ukraine war, they have to anybody with any wisdom whatsoever would capitulate in Ukraine, right? You got to. The idea that they're going to pour more resources into Ukraine, I think that's insanity. Like, that's insane. It's so obviously just handing money to weapons contractors and saying, like, we're doing it to help Ukraine, I guess. And it's just like full-throatedly embarrassed, right? Yeah, can't win one war, let's fight three. Yeah, exactly, dude. Exactly. And it's just, it can't and like the Ukrainian war is lost. Like, it's completely lost. They don't have the manpower, right? And no manpower is coming. Like, they can give the Ukrainians 100 botrillion, quad bazillion, infinitum. They could give them, like, the value's worth of the Infinity Stones if they wanted to. Like, if they had the ability to give the Ukrainians enough wealth to build a semi-functioning Death Star, it's not going to matter. They don't have anybody to operate the thing. They don't have anybody to actually... they don't have anybody to actually, like, get in the equipment, right? If there are no hands to pull the triggers, then you don't have anything going on. You got nothing going on. You don't have any troops, right? You don't have any troops. And the Ukrainians are, like, desperately, like, they're mobilizing old men, women, right? Meanwhile, the Russians are, like, mobilizing 18-year-olds and, like, 20-year-olds and, like, and it's just, and the people of Ukraine themselves are understanding that, like, this war is over. Like, this war is completely over. So it's just like, so the idea that they're going to keep shoving money at Ukraine really shows you that it's just about funneling money into the hands of weapons contractors, which is what it's always been. Like, it's not about Ukraine. It's just about making a small handful of psychopaths rich, right? Yeah, when they said the last Ukrainian, they meant it. Yeah, clearly. Yeah, and there are people who actually believe they're winning. I know, that's the craziest part, isn't it? People who actually think Ukraine can pull this out and actually win it. Like, how? Like, how? That's the thing that blows me away, dude. And, like, here's the reality, guys. Like, here's the reality. China is going to win Taiwan. Like, they're going to win Taiwan. And I think that there is going to be a difference between what happens in Taiwan and what happened in Ukraine, because Putin was drawn into that conflict begrudgingly, right? Putin was and then when he entered the conflict, he entered it in this very soft-handed, very just like, let's bring troops from all over Ukraine in along the entire border as a big show, right? Shock and awe strategy in the hopes that that will inspire some kind of de-escalation, which didn't work. And so his whole thinking and his whole strategy about it has been one of just, like, constant capitulation, one of, like, constant, like, okay. China is not going to fight. Like, when China starts fighting, it's not going to fight like that. It's not going to have this begrudging, just like, shucks. Oh, I've tried so many different ways, and I guess, oh, goodness me, and the people are telling me to, and oh, God, shucks. Like, Putin had this kind of, like, shucks attitude about the whole thing, and, like, finally had to go do it. And then did it kind of badly, right? The Chinese are not going to do that, right? They're not going to have an shucks attitude about Taiwan, right? If America gets it to the point where China needs to send military units into Taiwan, it's going to fucking send military units into Taiwan. And it's going to happen fast. It's going to be incredibly dominant. And it's just going to be like, bam! And it's going to happen, right? It's not going to be this soft-serving, like, little incremental artillery fire, inch forward, artillery fire, inch forward. Like, when China pulls that trigger and decides to actually go in, it's going to fucking do it. Like, and I am of the opinion that it's going to completely catch America and Americans off guard at how efficient and how professional and how excellent the Chinese execute on this military project and this military plan of theirs. Like, they're going to whip out shit that the Americans are just going to be like, what in the fuck are you even talking about? America's not prepared for the conflict that it's brewing in Taiwan. It is pure hubris. It is pure arrogance that the Americans think that they're going to walk into the Southeast China Sea and dominate the shit out of China. Like, it's pure arrogance. That the only reason this situation has not already resolved itself is because the Chinese don't want to win it militarily. They're not interested in winning a military victory. That if it was up to them, they would literally go, they would literally just wait for Taiwan to just say, yeah, of course we're Chinese. You know, there's the mainland. Our history is connected to China. We've been under this two systems, one party system for centuries now, right? And so obviously we're part of China. Like, what are you talking about, independence movement? Like, this is obviously working, right? So yeah, we're not going to worry about it. And like, China would be like, yeah, we're not going to worry about it. You're a province of China, right? And Taiwan's like, yeah, obviously. Right? And maybe in some rooms somewhere at some point, like, truly what the Chinese want is they want the president of the Communist Party of China to get on a boat with a small delegation and shuttle on over to Taiwan, walk to the main, to the royal palace, meet the president of Taiwan, and say, well, here we are in the glorious country of China, in the beautiful province of Taiwan, and have the president of Taiwan go, yes, welcome. Welcome to the province of Taiwan in the beautiful country of China. And then they'll sign a couple of documents and make some stamps, take a photo, and everybody will go home and it'll be done deal. And that's what the Chinese want. That's what the Chinese want. They're not interested in a military fight, but if it comes down to a military fight, they will fight, and they will win, and it will be swift. Like, that, I don't think America is ready for it. Like, America is fat and lazy and stupid and incompetent, and it's obvious. They've been going around bullying people who don't have navies. They've been going around bullying people who don't have air forces. They've been going around bullying people who don't have, like, standing, trained professional military armies. The Americans are getting beat by the Houthis, you guys. Like, the Americans are getting beat by, like, literally any militia force that has any training, any discipline, and any motivation whatsoever. The Americans are getting beat by them. What do you fucking think is going to happen if they try to take a swing at China? Like, China literally built, like, 200,000 kilometers of rail in 12 years. What do you fucking think is going to happen here? Like, how do you think it's going to look? Like, I just think that America is stepping on a gigantic landmine, and it's going to blow up in their face in a way that I don't think they're prepared to deal with. Like, I think it will finally be, if they do it because they're so fucking stupid, it'll be the final nail in the coffin that it will have to kick off, like, a series of existentialism. Like, it'll have to set them off on a path of, like, what in the fuck are we even doing? Like, what are you even talking about? Because it's going to be a swift defeat. Like, it's going to be a dust up. Because the Chinese are heavily focused, heavily motivated, intelligent, based in economic scientific realism, the economics of Marxism, right? And they're going to make their decisions that way. Whereas the Americans are literally like, yeah, let's tax the people $200 billion and $10 billion of that will actually turn into weapons that will actually equip someone, I guess. Who? We don't know. Not Americans. Like, there's no organization there. There's no actual chain of command there. There's no, like, literally you're just going to give weapons to Taiwanese people and say, okay, bye. Right? There's no actual hierarchy. Like, that's the thing. There's no centralized command structure. There's no control structure. It's literally just toss money at it and hope the chaos god lands on your side. It's not how it's going to go. Like, it's just not how it's going to go. Oh, yeah, and the TikTok ban. Like, the TikTok ban has become a real moment of, like, internally, like, domestically, those of us who have been saying out loud that, America is fascist, like, it's gotten pretty obvious to certain people, right? Like, it's just gotten obvious to like, when people mention, like, hey, like, these guys who are walking around talking about free speech when it comes to saying the N-word, like, when it comes to talking about how awesome slavery was, right, and being pro-slavery advocates, everybody's, free speech warrior. But if you stand up and actually point out, hey, the government's doing fascist shit, well, you get off the platform, you're banned, right? Like, it's obvious. It's obvious to anyone with a brain to look at it. Yeah, and XD is, like, really nailing this, right? For the millionth time, China makes all your shit. America makes nothing. America wants to go to war with the hand that feeds. I know, dude. That's the part about it that I think is so fucking wild. Like, it's so crazy that anybody has the temerity or the tenacity to talk about China's economy collapsing or any of this kind of stuff, when very straightforwardly, China could collapse America's economy today. They'd literally just stop exports to America, right? They do to America what America does to the rest of the world, which is put sanctions on it. And America has no manufacturing base, doesn't make anything important whatsoever. Like, and America is also losing in terms of the trade war, right? Like, I was thinking about this I've been thinking about this for a long time. I talk about this all the time, but it's definitely, like, becoming more crystallized in my mind, which is that the Chinese wisely resolved the military conflict on their borders. That was the transition from Maoism into Dangism. And they did so by opening up a new battlefield, right? An economic battlefield. The Americans did not understand that they were getting into an economic battle. They went, we won, right? Whereas the Chinese went, oh, okay, like, we're gonna declare military peace, and if it means fighting you economically, then we will. And the difference there is that at the time, the Americans, if it had to come down to a real battle between China and America, if China had have won, it would have destroyed their country, right? Whereas now, if America and China actually had, like, a real battle, like, we saw what happened in Ukraine, right? Russia's not China, right? Like the Taiwanese are not the Ukrainians. The situation's going to be dramatically different, and it's not going to go in favor of the West. Like, it's pretty wild to me that the West even has the temerity to do it, especially because, like, where's all our shit going to come from? Like, they're going to collapse the economy of their own nation to try to put their thumb in the eye of China, and it's going to kick off and spark, like, a massive trade war, right? Because all of the other countries of the world are basically going to have to choose which way they're going to want to jump, right? And don't be too shocked if huge sections of the world population jumps towards China. Right? Why? Because China's not bombing the shit out of them. China's not pointing guns at them and saying, do what we say or we'll shoot you. Long Defiant says, even if China takes over, it's still one hierarchy replacing another. Confucianism is a-okay, but still abusive to lower classes. It's not real social progress. I think Taiwan is existential to the West. Really? How is Taiwan existential to the West? Like, Taiwan is not an existential threat to the West. Like, it's definitely an existential threat to the Chinese. Like, you do not want an unsinkable aircraft carrier loaded with pro-American forces off your coast, right? For extremely obvious reasons. What is Taiwan being part of China? How is that an existential threat at all to America? And like, China is not interested in taking over. Like, that's the thing. Like, China. Taiwan contains a massive amount of intellectual property and the people necessary to capitalize on it. I don't think I understand what you mean. Like, China doesn't respect America's intellectual property laws, and it never has. One of the big statements that was made, like when they were negotiating peace with Kissinger, right, was China outright explicitly said, we're not going to respect your intellectual property rights. And Kissinger said, that's fine. Because Kissinger and and that whole crew of capitalists weren't interested in America. Right? They don't give a shit about America. Like, none of these capitalists care about America from a national perspective, right? They care about their own enrichment. They care about wealth for themselves. And so China gives them a deal that says, yeah, completely betray your own country and you'll be a billionaire. And America goes, yeah, Western capitalists say yes to that. And so China has never respected intellectual property laws of America. So I don't know why that plays here. If the world is going to be decided by artificial intelligence, then the place where chips are made is going to be existential to any dominant power. If you can't say capitalized, yeah, very good. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, I feel like if it comes down to that, like if it comes down to like Taiwan has a factory that's making the chips that do that, like China's just going to build that factory. Like, I just really struggle to see how, like, China's interest in Taiwan is because it's an enormous military threat. Like, it's an enormous military threat to have the United States put, like, military cruise missiles on the island of Taiwan, right? Like, that's like some straight up Cuban Missile Crisis shit right there. Like, China's not going to tolerate it, nor should they tolerate it. Right? It's been understood since the 60s that Taiwan is part of China. But yeah, who controls chip production? Right. Like, if China was actually concerned about that on the level that you're talking about, and like the solution, right, to any rational thing, like, why are you spending $200 billion on a war? $200 billion, build a factory. Like, if it's about this fucking factory, then build your goddamn factory. I don't understand this. Like, what are we even talking about here? Right? I think the issue is actually just a lot deeper than from the American perspective. Like, from the Chinese perspective, it's very much like, yes, we don't want you to bomb us. Right? That's pretty black and white. But the American perspective is very much rooted in its history of white supremacy, its desire for world domination and control, right? Like maybe it's using like chip factory as an excuse, but like, yeah, the United States is trying to build chip factories with its own borders, but it can't because we're burger eaters. It refuses to pay decent wages. Understood. Like it just refuses to pay decent wages. Like that's what I'm hearing. Like, yeah, we'll build a chip factory, $7.50 an hour. Nope, not gonna fly. No thanks. Not interested. Right? Oh, you're just a bunch of burger eaters. I mean, it's true. Like, it's true. But like, the American capital, like, what we're really struggling with. Yeah, educationally, the United States is decades away from having the kind of workers that are necessary to build those chips. Yeah, because they destroyed their education system, right? Like, even if they decided to actually do the thing that we're describing, they've destroyed themselves so thoroughly that they can't actually do the thing that they want to do. So they'd rather spend hundreds of billions of dollars training military personnel to drop bombs on those factories overseas than actually spend any amount of time actually building those factories for themselves. Because to do that would mean actually educating their citizens, and if you have an educated citizenry, then that's dangerous to the system of capital. Like, no, I mean, like, I love you too, Long Defiant. I saw that message. How dare you delete that message where you were confessing your love for me? How dare you? I love you too. I'm going to assume that you meant that for somebody else and it slipped into that message and you sent it. Or that really was the moment you wanted to confess your love to me. And you know what, Long Defiant? I love you too. I do. Yeah, I do think, I agree. Like, it's a lot of things. It's definitely cultural. Like, it's definitely, like, but at the bottom line, like, what's the culture? The culture is make as much money for capitalists as possible. And if it's not going to make as much money for capitalists as possible, then it doesn't get done. Right? Like, it really is, like, this very short line. Like, it's not a complex formula. Does it make money for the richest people in the society? No, then it doesn't get done. No matter how much sense it makes, right? No matter how much logic it makes. We are a country that literally cannot take empty houses and put homeless people in those empty houses, right? We don't know how to go 1 + 1 = 2, right? And we're not interested in going 1 + 1 = 2 because it doesn't benefit the owners of the society. So if the solution is take the money that you would spend on military expenditures and build that fucking factory yourself, and so you have it, right? But then that means that you've got to start thinking like a Marxist, right? That means that you've got to actually understand that true power exists in the means of production, the ability to produce stuff, right? Western capitalists do not understand that at all. Like, at all. And it's really obvious that they don't, by the way. Like, and like, as time has gone forward, and as we learn more about what's going on in the world and more about how these lunatics think about the world, the more we see that they genuinely worship money. It's money to them. If I have $100 billion, I'm the best person in the world. And everybody should listen to me because I have $100 billion. Well, it's meaningless. Doesn't mean a goddamn thing. Yeah, we can build all the factories we want. It takes a long time in America. Yeah, because capitalists get in the way of it, right? They buy the land, they buy the resources, they create scarcity on purpose, right? So you got to deal with these worthless, pathetic capitalists that are constantly vulturing your project, right? You can't actually do anything because everything takes like 10 times as long. And then, of course, the capitalists want to get you on a treadmill, right? So they'll be like, oh, yeah, that building, we can build that. It'll take 6 months to build that building. 6 months passes. They don't even have the foundation laid. Oh, we've encountered difficulties, and there's a thing in the market. It's going to cost an extra $10,000 another 6 months. And they get you on that treadmill. You see it all the time in construction. That's why nothing gets built. Right, because the construction company is in with the government, and the government is in with the construction company, and they've got you on a loop, right? And they, as long as something's getting built, then the quote unquote taxpayers are like, oh, I guess this is just normal. When meanwhile China is literally like buildings, major infrastructure, gigantic rail systems, right? Like, if that's what they're doing domestically, what do you think they're doing militarily? Yeah, I mean, we could have the people to staff the factories, but it would mean having a real education system, right? It would mean actually educating those people. And you can't have that. That's that just cannot be done. You can't have an educated populace in America. Because the first thing an educated populace would actually do is go, oh, these capitalists are worthless. Let's get rid of them. Like, it would take an educated populace, like, 2 days, like literally just walk to Warren Buffett's house, I mean, like, why do you have a say in what anything happens here? Like, what are you talking about? You know, like the idea that there aren't already millions of people surrounding the White House and just camping out there and just like basically being like, yeah, this is an illegitimate project. It's delegitimized itself. Like, it's pretty wild to me. Like, for God's sakes, we've got like pro-Israel U.S. groups plan $100 million effort to unseat progressives over Gaza. Pro-Israel groups are pumping millions into this year's heated congressional races, singling out progressives who have voiced criticism on the Israeli government and its relentless campaign in Gaza. And that'll work. Right? That'll work. They'll just get pushed out. Because that's how the system actually functions now. Right? It doesn't exist for the benefit of the people, if it ever did. Right? It doesn't care about what the people actually think, if it ever did. It's not responding. And if it does respond, right, those people get pushed out. Right? Like, none of these people are ever going to become like the leader of the country. None of them are ever going to vote against any of this shit. Right? It's just going to be endless war where all of your effort and all of your productivity and all of your work is just going to get funneled into the coffers of psychopaths. And they're just going to go buy Jeffrey Epstein's pedophile island while bombing the shit out of countries you'll never see. Like, that's the structure of the whole piece. Meanwhile, Biden launches a police state crackdown at U.S. Universities. Right? Speaking of education, right? Like, here's what your education system actually looks like. We have somebody over on Twitch, Black Rose. I don't just click on random links, Black Rose. So, oh yeah, a nation drowning in shit. How privatization effed the UK? Yeah, I mean, privatization is a terrible idea, right on the face of it. Like, even theoretically, like, there's just no angle by which privatization makes any sense. The only argument they ever had in order to attempt to justify it was, we can do it more efficiently. That competition breeds innovation, efficiency, but it's like nonsense. It's utter nonsense. You're taking functioning systems and tacking parasites onto the side of them, and then expecting them to work better. Like, it just doesn't matter. Like, I don't care what argument you use. It's just not going to work, right? And the whole like competition breeds innovation idea is like that. Yeah, the innovation is literally like, how do we put poison into this so we don't have to buy a clean so we don't have to make clean products, and that'll make more money. There's your innovation, right? Like, how do we put like potassium bromate and like chlorine into this so that it dilutes it enough so that we make a 5% profit share over 10 years. It'll kill a bunch of school children, but, you know, an extra 30 cents for me every 2 days. Sure. We made natural monkeys out of our water industry. Like, the privatization of water systems, I just recently read an article from Pennsylvania where the privatization of the water systems in Pennsylvania is such a disaster that they're actually rolling it back. That straight up in your hardcore, like, capitalist society where privatization's king and all this kind of stuff, well, they're rolling it back. Why? Because the people who owned the water system were gouging people. Right? They literally were just raising prices year over year because they could. And there was no mechanism by which to stop them. And so they're just rolling it back and destroying it. Like, water privatization has got to be the dumbest idea I can possibly think of. And it's all based on this idea that somehow the most psychopathic people in your society will act in a way that's beneficial somehow. Like, I just don't understand this logic at all. This one I actually do want to read. Biden launches police state crackdown at U.S. universities. This is from Andre Damon. The developments over the past week mark a political turning point. The Biden administration, in alliance with the fascist-led Republican Party, has moved to criminalize political opposition to the Gaza genocide, currently centered on campuses, through a massive police state mobilization. Demonstrations continue to spread on college campuses throughout the United States in response to the escalating Gaza genocide, which is being funded, armed, and politically enabled by the Biden administration. Asked by a reporter on Monday, "What's your message to the protesters?" President Joe Biden replied, "I condemn the anti-Semitic protests." The charge of anti-Semitism is Biden's big lie. It has no basis in reality. His remark Monday followed a statement Sunday in which he denounced the reprehensible and dangerous anti-Semitism which has absolutely no place on college campuses or anywhere in our country. By sheer repetition, the Biden administration, along with the entire political establishment and the media, hope to bludgeon people into accepting that protests over the Gaza genocide are animated by anti-Semitism. This slander is made all the more absurd by the fact that many participants in the demonstrations and a large number of those arrested are Jewish, and organizations such as Jewish Voice for Peace have played a leading role in the protests. On Tuesday evening, police arrested over 300 members of JVP who were participating in a Passover Seder near the house of Senator Chuck Schumer in Brooklyn. The Jewish holiday commemorates the liberation of the Hebrews from slavery in Egypt. Protesters wore shirts proclaiming, "Not in our name," and "Jews say ceasefire now." Across the country, police stormed college campuses, carrying out hundreds of arrests. At New York University, cops clad in riot gear arrested over 100 students and faculty on Monday night, beating protesters and using pepper spray. At Yale University, 47 students were arrested Monday. At Cal Poly Humboldt, riot police stormed into a university building and arrested students. 9 students were arrested Tuesday at the University of Minnesota. On Tuesday night, student leaders at Columbia said university administrators had threatened to call on the National Guard to suppress the protest, raising the prospect of a repeat of the Kent State Massacre of May 4th, 1970. In that incident, 4 Ohio college students were killed by the Ohio National Guard during a protest against the Vietnam War. Biden is carrying out his crackdown in alliance with and at the instigation of America's leading fascists and anti-Semites, such as Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene and Senators Tom Cotton and Josh Hawley. On Tuesday, Hawley and Cotton were joined by other leading Senate Republicans, including Lindsey Graham and Charles Grassley, in demanding that Biden go even further. The senator's letter welcomes Biden's statements condemning anti-Semitism, but calls on the administration to carry out criminal prosecutions and deportations of participants in the demonstrations. The letter declares that there is an outbreak of anti-Semitic pro-terrorist mobs on college campuses, led by pro-Hamas rioters. It alleges that anti-Israel protesters, spurred on by prominent leftists, have gathered on college campuses in recent days. It states that federal law enforcement must act immediately to restore order, prosecute the mobs who have perpetrated violence and threats against Jewish students, revoke the visas of all foreign nationals, such as exchange students, who have taken part in promoting terrorism, and hold accountable school administrators. The letter reveals the fundamental political content of the crackdown on college campuses. Far from being a response to alleged anti-Semitic incidents of violence, it is aimed at banning all forms of left-wing opposition to the policies of American imperialism. The language is itself an incitement to violence, appealing to forces such as those who gathered at the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia in 2017. Which culminated in the murder of counter-demonstrator Heather Heyer. The police assault on campuses is an open repudiation of the most basic principles of free speech. The conception of the autonomy of universities in which open debate is encouraged and protected is being completely overturned. Academic institutions are being transformed into agencies for the promotion of imperialist war policy, imposed by means of police batons, arrests, expulsions, and deportations. In a 2019 report, the Council of Europe declared that the democracy, human rights, and the rule of law cannot become and remain a reality unless higher education institutions and staff and students enjoy academic freedom and institutional autonomy. Conversely, we cannot have genuine democracy unless the higher education and research community is able to inquire freely. The crackdown on political opposition on college campuses is the leading edge of a systematic effort to dismantle freedom of expression in the United States. Already, this campaign is spreading to workplaces, with Google announcing the firing of over 50 employees for protesting its ties to the Israeli government. The massive crackdown now unfolding on college campuses is inextricably connected to the global eruption of American imperialism. In 2022, Biden proclaimed the decisive decade in which the United States would win the competition for the 21st century. Biden has set out to construct a U.S.-dominated New World Order through military violence, aiming to subjugate Russia, China, and Iran. Victory in the geopolitical competition between all the major powers requires the seamless integration of all aspects of society, Biden said, declaring, "The Biden-Harris administration has broken down the dividing line between domestic and foreign policy." In the crackdowns on college campuses throughout the country, the world is witnessing the implementation of this policy of subordinating of all aspects of society to the war policies of American imperialism. The central role of the Biden administration and the Democratic Party in supporting the Gaza genocide and the crackdown on domestic political opposition makes clear the complete bankruptcy of the politics of supporting the so-called lesser evil. The policies of war and attacks on democratic rights have the full support of the entire U.S. political establishment because they reflect the central needs of the capitalist system. Responding, hold on, what was this tweet? From Joseph Kishore. This battle, however, cannot be waged on campuses alone. It must be taken into the working class, which has the social power to oppose imperialism, and whose social interests are in conflict with the entire capitalist system. Responding to the growing protests on campuses and beyond, Joseph Kishore, the Socialist Equity Party candidate for president in the 2024 presidential election, stated on Twitter the thing I just said, and the Socialist Equality Party election campaign calls on students and facility on every campus to turn out to the factories and workplaces. We call on workers to denounce the attack on students and organize protests to demand an end to the repression. The fight against the genocide in Gaza must be developed as a fight of the international working class against imperialism and the capitalist system. Paul the Eggman says, could you remove the Palestinian flag in the background? Absolutely not. Under no circumstances. Too bad. We here at the Canadian Commie stand against imperialism in the real sense, not in the fake liberal sense. We stand for revolutions, and we stand for those who fight against imperialism in the real sense, not in the fake liberal sense. We don't support people in history. We support people as it happens today and right now. Like, that's what makes liberalism so phony. That they'll look at someone like Nelson Mandela or Martin Luther King, and they'll speak of them so glowingly, and their struggle for civil rights, and their struggle against apartheid, and their struggle in the past. But if it was happening right now, directly in front of them, they would condemn it. They would tell them, well, why can't you just follow the law? Right? You don't need to use violence. Just follow the law and negotiate peacefully. Right? Incremental reformism will get it done. Which is basic bootlicker shit. So liberals seem to love every revolutionary struggle except the one that's actually happening. And Western leftists and Western Marxists love the revolutionary struggle except the ones that are actually ongoing and the ones that have actually worked. Right? Like, it's sort of wild. So I will absolutely not be removing this Palestinian flag. I want this Palestinian flag to be here, and if that makes you uncomfortable, tough shit. No, I think it's good to point it out. There it is. Mikhail, good to see you. Like, it's new. It's here. I'm happy it's here. There is, near my neighborhood, there is a Islamic bookstore. And that fellow, I can tell, I walk by that bookstore a lot. And I can tell that the guy has steadily, like, the neighborhood has been going through like a real internal communication and internal conversation. And I actually think the thing that has moved it forward, the thing that made that conversation accelerate, were kids with graffiti. I think that kids with graffiti really escalated that conversation very quickly. And people who are in the community, because it's a diverse community, right? It's not just like one culture. So it's a diverse community from different backgrounds and different peoples. So it's tough to say who's going to land where on what. But then the kids just started spreading graffiti all around that was pro-Palestinian and anti-Zionist. And it was made pretty obvious to everybody walking through that neighborhood that, like, yeah, we stand with Palestine in this neighborhood. And the Islamic bookstore started selling Palestinian flags. And put a Palestinian flag in his window, which he didn't initially, for very obvious and very clear reasons. I don't hold that against him at all. And once I saw that he was doing that, I walked in there, picked up a flag, right? Picked up a flag. Like, the whole, like, do you condemn Hamas line? Get the fuck out of here with this shit. Do you condemn Luke Skywalker? But they blew up the Death Star. Won't someone think of the stormtroopers? Think of all the lives that were lost by the death of the Death Star. Why won't someone think of so much? The Empire killed those stormtroopers. The Empire killed those stormtroopers. I think the waves of people who have taken a stand and lost status and jobs is taking a toll. Yeah, it's a new era of, like, McCarthyism, right? Like, the McCarthy era worked. Like, the blacklisting of people works. That's the reason why it's done, right? And you're seeing that happen throughout the corporate world. You're seeing it happen throughout the governmental world. You're seeing it happen throughout social media. That the system is trying to protect itself, and it has done so in the past. Like, the Red Scare was real and it worked. I don't know who Danny Shaw is, and I don't know what CUNY is. So no. Who is this? Like, why? Like, my assumption is that this is happening constantly, right? Like, that it's constant. That if somebody stands up in support for Palestine, they're gonna get fired. They're gonna get removed. Like, like, that's how it's gonna go, right? Because it's. We're full-blown psychopathic, like, we're full-blown psychotic. I don't think our society is capable of thinking rationally anymore. I think that we're in a hysteria. Like, just yesterday, and I think that hysteria is manifesting itself in many different ways. And the big way that I think that it's manifesting itself, that's obvious, is in the anti-trans rhetoric and in the anti-trans movement. I think it's the same hysteria. It's just people are grabbing hold of the lowest possible hanging fruit that they can articulate on, and try to sound like they're reasonable or rational people, when nobody in this society is rational right now. There's nobody who's got their feet on the ground and are actually looking at things in a rational, sane sort of way. Because, like, if we were looking at things in a rational, sane sort of way, we would all just be like, wait, whoa, what are you talking about? Just, like, straight up, like, manufacture shit, make shit, trade shit. Like, what is this war shit? What are you talking about? What are you even talking about with this shit? Like, well, if we don't completely destroy the Middle East, then a new Arab state will arise, and it'll be Muslim. There'll be a Muslim Arab caliphate that'll come over here and destroy us. So we gotta carpet bomb them constantly, forever and eternally, and make sure we steal their oil forever and eternally, and endless war constantly. It's the only path. It's the only path for liberty and democracy and freedom. Meanwhile, like, None of those countries have a standing air force, a standing navy, a standing military, really, even. It's like militia, mainly. Uh, uh, like, and there's an ocean, there's like a whole fucking ocean between us and them. The idea that, like, Iraq, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Turkey, Syria, and, like, Qatar are all gonna, like, join forces swiftly and create, like, an empire together all at once suddenly, and then build an air force, and then build a navy, and build all this stuff, so that they could ever be, like, even remotely close to a threat to America. Like, if that project began today, maybe they would have it finished in 200 years. Maybe. If we just left it alone and nothing interfered with it. So, like, it's just like religious fantasy porn at this point. Like, we're all supposed to live in this, like, apocalyptic death world. Like, it's crazy. So Danny Shaw was a professor who was on Midwestern Marks a bunch of times. CUNY is a community college in New York. Oh, yeah. Like, if they start going after, I forget his name, but there's like kind of a Hermetist Marxist professor. And then, of course, there's Richard Wolff, right, who is, like, the preeminent Marxist. But, like, I mean, I think that they feel like communism and Marxism has mainly been, like, if they launched a Red Scare now, it'd be like, on who? Like, you'd get me and Midwestern Marx and, like, a couple of YouTube people, but, like, it's just like what are you gonna do? You're gonna go after YouTube, I guess, would be their strategy. So we're in the midst of a McCarthy Red Scare over this Palestine stuff because they understand that they need to destroy it. They understand that. They understand that they have to go after people who are protesting on behalf of the Palestinians. They have to, right? They can't. They're not capable of thinking rationally. The whole strategy is to have this military base in the Middle East and to maintain that military base. And it's all tied up in, like, this Zionist religious nonsense, right? Like, as soon as you get, like, Christian Zionism involved in it, as soon as you get Christian evangelicals involved in it, it just turns into this, like, absolute like, they think they're doing it because God wants them to, right? Like, really, really accept that and, like, really put that in. Like, this is some straight up, like, yeah, like Warhammer 40K shit. Like, straight up, like, for the God Emperor, we shall invade the unholy land and spread our presence there for the liberty and glory of the true Emperor God. And this is how they think, and this is what they're doing. And it's like, it's stupid to say. Like, it sounds stupid to say, but it's just true. I've seen videos of Congress people literally arguing that Jesus Christ wants to spread the Gospels into the heathen lands. Like, this is how these people are talking about it. It's demented. Like, it's demented at the highest possible level. It's completely detached from anything even remotely close to reality. And these are the people who are, like, congressmen, governors, the president. Like, America is going into this enormous, massive decline. And I would say that that's probably the primary reason. Because they're just detached from reality. From Newsweek, no less. Is this the full article? Yeah, I'm going to read this whole article because I want to hear what Newsweek has to say. From Newsweek, America is in decline. What is this? Have these people been reading the Canadian? Have they been listening into the Canadian commie? Let's find out. Conton writes, I got my degree at CUNY. Great school. It's just like, I gotta tell you, CUNY is just a funny group of letters. That's all. And you know why. A new Gallup poll showed that just 33% of Americans are satisfied with the nation's position in the world today. This is down from 65% in 2000. As Donald Trump and Joe Biden, two historically old and deeply unpopular presidential candidates, square off yet again for America's top job, it's not hard to understand these sentiments. America is in decline in the 21st century in measure after measure, from numerous public policy failures to increasingly dysfunctional politics to an epidemic of mental health issues among young people. The predicament raises two essential questions. Is America's downturn merely another dip in a long arc of non-linear, yet essentially upward progress? Huh? Or is it rather the first phase of steep and irreversible national decline? A fair question to ask, I have to say. For a pro-capitalist, pro-Western magazine to even ask the question, like, at least they're acknowledging there's a decline. So they're asking, is it a big fucking decline, or is it just a little bump in the road? The answer lies with the American people. Like all nations, America is, above all, the hearts and minds of its people. Geez, this is some straight-up communist rhetoric we've got here. Holy cow. I thought that America was about capitalists. I thought that capitalists were the job creators, and that whatever the capitalists wanted was what happened. But now I'm being told that it's the hearts and minds of its people. Oh. And the trend line is moving hard in the wrong direction. Things are getting worse, not better. Tribalism is intensifying. Social media platforms are getting smarter at manipulating human cognition. The political system's defects are worsening. And America's public policy failures are deepening. The remedies are easy to prescribe. We must improve civic education in schools, raise awareness about cognitive bias throughout society, spend more time with people from other tribes, reduce and regulate the use of social media, rework the... This guy's okay, here is his remedies. Here's his rapid fire. Here's the solutions. This is what we should do. Notice not one of them is topple the capitalists, the actual source of our issues. Number one, we must improve civic education in schools. Cool. I agree. Americans would widely believe that improving civic education would be by promoting anti-communist rhetoric, right? That's exactly what DeSantis would say that he's doing in Florida. Yeah, I'm increasing civic education in schools. I'm spreading anti-communist propaganda into the school so that children will be fascists. We're improving civic education. Raise awareness about cognitive bias throughout society. That's an interesting one to focus in on. Spend more time with people from other political tribes, right? Because forget about the economic disparity, right? Forget about the ownership class. Forget about the capitalists. No, it's about having a black friend. That's what it's about. Have a black friend, you guys, and that'll solve all the problems. Reduce and regulate the use of social media. TikTok ban. TikTok ban. Rework the political structure to foster more political parties and equal representation. Not going to happen. Just straight up. 0% chance of that happening, dude. I love listening to people who are not connected to reality offer solutions, right? Might as well just be saying, ask the Queen God Ashala to bless us. Just not a real thing that's not going to happen. Double down on free speech, whatever that means, right? It seems like free speech means that you get to say the N-word, but if you say, hey, my wages are low, then you get banned off TikTok. Feverishly guard election integrity. Feverishly guard election integrity. This guy's so fucking out to lunch. Like, he's finally acknowledged that America's in a decline. But he thinks it's in a decline because people are stupid. Like, that's why he thinks it's in a decline. Right? All of his solutions are literally make people smarter somehow. It's like a total failure to acknowledge the source of the problem. Like, we've gotten to the point where they're capable of acknowledging the existence of reality, right? It's taken us, like, my entire lifetime it's taken to get people to acknowledge the existence of reality itself, and that we are, in fact, going into a decline at all. And there's just a small group of people, including this fellow in Newsweek, that's like, oh yes, we certainly are going into a decline. All of the metrics say so. Look, reality. What's the solution? Well, we gotta just make people smarter, don't we? People are too dumb and we gotta make them smarter. Okay. Yet in practice, these goals have been impossible to achieve. Yeah, no shit, dude. Because your goals are looking at anything other than the actual problem, which is that there's an ownership class that's extracting wealth from the society. Like, why are you not talking about income inequality? Like, it's just embarrassing at this point. Like, it's annoying to see these articles that actually finally acknowledge that there is a problem at all in the first place, only to completely whiff on what's going on. Like, it's just totally embarrassing. But keep it up. It's opening up the market for people like me. Too broad and overlapping global trends will only make reversing the free fall harder as the 21st century moves on. So you've already been wrong about what the problems are. Like, these are not solutions. Like, I mean, cool ideas, right? Nice ideas that you had while, like, watching Star Trek or whatever. First, technology is getting more sophisticated at a dizzying pace. The positives are huge. The internet democratizes education. Interesting. Streaming innovations like Netflix enrich entertainment. Debatable. New products like self-driving cars revolutionize transportation. if they ever work. Highly sophisticated research dramatically improves medicine. Pioneering technologies substantially broaden the distribution of necessities like food and clothing. Yeah, except all of that is withheld from us by a system of capital that you don't seem to understand or acknowledge exists. It's so fucking annoying. But the negatives are unnerving. I'm looking forward to seeing what this guy thinks a negative is. Online innovations like deepfakes compound the internet's harm. Those poor celebrities. The celebrities. Their faces are being used for things that they don't want their faces to be used. Poor celebrities. Poor cybersecurity undermines the safety of personal data and control of computerized systems, which is a real problem as they're trying to digitize the whole system, the whole thing, so they can keep track of, whatever you buy on the internet. Popular applications, like Chinese-owned TikTok, give rival governments control over Americans' private information? Dude. Like, he's just saying this shit. Like, they just say it. They're just like, yeah, that's a true fact. That's a definite thing that's definitely 100% totally happening for sure. as if the NSA isn't doing just exactly that. Like, they're just harvesting all of our information and putting it in databanks. But it's the TikToks. The TikToks is the real problem. Artificial intelligence jeopardizes humanity in ways neither clear nor certain. Certainly not to you, bud. Industrial innovations like fracking plunder the environment. Battlefield innovations like drones change the face of warfare. Nothing about the system of capital. Just not even an acknowledgement that it even exists. All of these things are just happening. Second, international affairs are getting more complicated. It took America a full 2 centuries to achieve global hegemony and merely 2 decades to lose it. As it's almost as though a single nation is not supposed to have global hegemony. And I mean, pretty debatable as to whether or not they ever actually achieved it. As former United States CIA Director and Defense Secretary Robert Gates wrote in a September 2023 Foreign Affairs essay, "The dysfunctional superpower, geopolitical threats to America are multiplying. The United States finds itself in a uniquely treacherous position, facing aggressive adversaries, with a propensity to miscalculate, yet incapable of mustering the unity and strength necessary to dissuade them." Wait, hold on. Wait a minute. I gotta reread this quote, because I think I've just misunderstood it. This is Robert Gates. The United States finds itself in a uniquely treacherous position. This is the position that the United States finds itself in. Facing aggressive adversaries, like, bro, is there anyone more aggressive on the world stage than America? Like, talk about the pot calling the kettle black, dude. Like, facing aggressive adversaries. Yeah, maybe they wouldn't be so aggressive to you if you stopped, I don't know, funding Nazis to shell them on the border of their country. Maybe if you stopped promoting independence movements in provinces they own. I don't know, maybe if you just stopped ethnically cleansing people in areas that you are colonizing. Maybe they wouldn't seem so aggressive to you if you weren't actively seeking their total destruction. Like, it's wild. It's a wild it's positioning America as the victim of circumstance as opposed to the one that's obviously perpetuating all of this shit. All right. Facing aggressive adversaries, and those adversaries have a propensity to miscalculate, yet incapable of mustering. This quote is wild. Facing aggressive adversaries with a propensity to miscalculate, yet incapable of mustering the unity and strength necessary to dissuade them. Like, there's a reason why America cannot muster the unity and strength necessary to dissuade them. Because they've reached the conclusion, like China and Russia have reached the conclusion that America is a psychopathic nation. Very obviously. They wish it wasn't so. They keep saying it. That, like, China is standing there being like, we can just peacefully coexist. We could just peacefully coexist with one another. We don't even need to fight. Look at how much stuff we're making for you. You know what we really like about you, America? Hollywood. Your movies are just great. And there's like 1 billion of us. And we'll watch all your shit. You guys are all right, America. Please don't bomb us. Right? And like, America's just sitting over there being like, why won't they bend the knee? Why won't they give me and turn into a vassal state and say that America's the best? Their flag isn't the red, white, and blue, and they don't love Jesus Christ the way that I do. We gotta get over there and make it go. And they just get red-faced about it just because these people are like, just want to live their own fucking lives. Like, that's it. That seems to be the big complaint. Right? And now the CIA director is bitching at the top of his lungs, like writing articles and shit in Foreign Affairs, basically being like, nobody likes us anymore. Everybody's mad at us, and they don't like us anymore. Yeah, dude. Who would like you? Why would anybody like you? Give me one reason. Like, I feel like I'm talking to, like, a straight-up incel who's just like, girls don't want to touch my pee-pee. It's like, yeah, because every single time you talk to them, you, like, throw shit at them and treat them like shit. Andrew, good to see you. Over on Twitch. Like, get your shit together, America. Get your shit together. According to Gates, the quote continues, the United States now confronts graver threats to its security than it has in decades, perhaps ever. Never before has it faced 4 allied antagonists at the same time: Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran, whose collective nuclear arsenal could within a few years be nearly double the size of its own. Not since the Korean War has the United States had to contend with powerful military rivals in both Europe and Asia. Like, stop acting like dips. Like, it's just so funny now. Like, I just cannot take this shit serious. If the nukes started to go off, like, right now, I would just be like, yeah, fucking idiots. What a bunch of dimwits these guys are. Literally, they're fighting for nothing. Creating enemies wherever they go. The alienation of Russia was easily, like, that was, like, a huge moment for me where I was like, oh, these guys are too stupid to realize how stupid they are. Like, it's straight up that John Cleese quote. These guys are too stupid to realize how stupid they are. Haley over on Twitch, when you've got a second, why do you think China's birth rate is second lowest on Earth and continues to get lower even a decade after they lifted the one-child policy? I think in a nutshell, it does come down to, like, culturally they understand that it is possible. Like, I think they all culturally just came to an understanding that's like, oh yeah, like, having a shit ton of children is a bad idea. And then I also think that the system of capital itself encourages lower birth rates, right? And so I think there's a combination of those two things. And I think that China basically was like, yeah, we need to, like, we have 1.4 billion people. We gotta look out for that, right? Andrew continues, there may soon be a new world order. There's always a new world order, dude. There's always some new world order happening. But it's not just America's biggest rivals that matter. Yeah, it's America itself. America just shooting itself over and over and over, right in its own ass over again. Within a few decades, it's likely that even small countries will have military capacities that in key respects exceed those of the superpowers today. Given the dominance and cohesion of America's military, can't beat the Houthis, another civil war is highly unlikely. Huh? Question mark? The worst case scenario arising from America's dysfunction isn't domestic mismanagement, it's foreign policy miscalculation. Dude, if this author is seriously trying to tell me that America is not mismanaging things domestically, this guy's a dimwit. Jesus Christ, they're just like, they're allowing anybody to get published, eh? Like who is this guy? Who is it? What's his expertise? Where is this guy? Like, hold on, I really gotta stop for a second. Published, okay, William, what was his name? William Cooper is the author of How America Works and Why It Doesn't. Literally just some guy wrote a book, and now he's publishing articles in Newsweek. I gotta write me a book. That's what I gotta do. I gotta write me a book. Get a book written, and then I can publish articles. Look up a CIV. That's fine. I feel like I've gone deep enough. These dynamics establish a striking truism that looms over humanity. The world's preeminent democracy and most powerful nation is in decline, precisely when the challenges faced by the world are mounting, and its need for rational leadership has never been more urgent. Somewhere, beneath the thickening surface of tribal bedlam and political fervor, however, is still a core national impulse to confront and overcome big challenges. Oh good, nationalism. That'll get it done. Here we go, guys. The solution to all of our problems. Nationalism. The question is how strong that impulse remains. The French political scientist Alix de Tocqueville visited America in 1831 and 1832. A close observer of human behavior, de Tocqueville, his name is literally de Tocqueville, right? Am I crazy? That's what I'm looking at. De Tocqueville. De Tocqueville. Tacoville, that's his name, Tacoville, traveled across the country taking copious notes on what he saw. His book, Democracy in America, is a classic text in political science, and he has been revered for capturing the true essence of America like few others, either before or since. Perhaps Tacoville's most profound insight was that the greatness of America lies not in being more enlightened than any other nation, but rather in her ability to repair her faults. 21st century America is putting this thesis through a searing test. Our nation is in decline, and the world will find out soon enough whether or not Tacoville's insight is still true. Nah, bro, the empire's dying. It's dying because it doesn't, it's ceded all of its power and all of its authority. It's all, everything to the capitalist death cult that you don't even talk about. That's the wildest part about this. America is in decline. There's a bunch of rich people over there. We don't need to pay attention to them. It's just in decline. Wild. It has to be pro-empire. You won't get any traction. I think you're probably right, dude. If it doesn't start with America's the greatest country in the world and all of the wars that it ever did were good. William Cooper, somebody who's doing it to me? Nova Scotia Communists. Yeah, okay. Author, I guess. How America Works. Here, I should. How I bet you it's just going to start with William Cooper, well-known neo-Nazi fascist, works and why it doesn't. Dude, I hope that happens. Come on, give me the Wikipedia. Wikipedia. Wow, is there not a Wikipedia for this guy? Does this guy not exist on Wikipedia? Milton William Cooper. Bro. Hold on, I gotta make sure that this is the right guy. How America... I don't think this is the same guy. Because the guy that we just read wrote a book called How America Works. And he got published in Newsweek. I think this guy's dead. So I don't think this is the same guy. Yeah, this guy died in November 5th, 2001. Not the same guy. Yeah, I don't know why. Anyway. Sorry. Just taking a look at this guy, man. How America Works and Why It Doesn't. Here it is. This is him. Right? About. William Cooper is an attorney, national columnist, and award-winning author. His writings have appeared in hundreds of publications around the world, including the New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, Newsweek, San Francisco Chronicle, Chicago Sun-Times, Huffington Post, Toronto Star, and Jerusalem Post. Publisher Weekly calls his commentary about American politics a compelling rallying cry for democratic institutions under the threat in America. He is the author of the nonfiction books Stress Test and How America Works and Why It Doesn't, and the novel A Quiet Life. How America Works gives teens a fun behind-the-scenes look at how the U.S. government works. That's so stupid. This is just straight liberal shit, right? The article that we just read and this guy and, the whole thing is just, straight liberal trash. That's the part about it that is just so crazy to me. That we're all just supposed to, absolutely listen to these kind of dim-witted dorks whose solutions literally are, we just need to educate people better. That's all. People just need better education, That's it. We got to just make people be better educated, and you know what we got to really make sure is we got to make sure that the Republican Party gets a better candidate than Donald Trump. Yep, these are solutions that are serious. I'm a serious commentator. The only reason he gains traction is because a bunch of like Midwestern housewives are just like, yeah, better education will really help people out. Yeah, will, gee willikers, right? Like a fundamental misunderstanding of what's actually happening around them. Like, but the hard truth, right, is that like, if this guy were to actually stand up and be like, hey, the system of capital is devouring itself, right? Like Karl Marx was right. The system of capital is turning against itself. It's where we've entered an extraction period where capital doesn't care about building institutions, doesn't care about building anything, that everything is a scam that is designed to extract as much wealth out of the society as possible. If he were to start talking that way, he would never be published. Right? Any editor from any of these places would read that article and be like, no, we're not going to publish something that basically indicts the system of capital and the capitalist class for causing the problems that are facing the society, even though that's obviously what's happening, right? That's obviously what's happening. So it's just like, I'm glad I read this article just to remind me, like, it's very affirming, you know, very, very, very life affirming that, like, yeah, there's definitely going to be a vacuum left. As long as these people are going to continuously leave a vacuum and not provide meaningful answers to people and not provide anything, then there's always going to be room for a guy like me to stand there and be like, hey, did you know reality exists? Hey, you notice how there's like one guy that has like $200 billion and he's just a dimwit? Like, have you noticed it? How there's just this guy over here? And then right beside him is another guy that has like $1.2 billion or $120 billion. And he's also just a big fucking dimwit. Have you noticed it? And then right beside him, there's another guy and he has $98 billion. And he is also, get this, you'll never fucking believe it, a total fucking dimwit. Have you noticed how all of these phenomenal cowards, pedophiles, and dimwits keep becoming the richest people in America? Why do you think that might be? Why do you think that might be? Right? Can't have that conversation. Not a conversation that can be meaningfully had. Andrew writes, I went to the mausoleum in Red Square as a child and several times in my conscious life. Always a queue, always free. Awesome. Yeah, super awesome. Like, I am glad to see and I'm glad to hear that even though that Russia went through, and I've noticed this about Putin as well, that Russia went through a period of capitalist restoration and is still kind of dealing with that capitalist restoration, which I think cut a lot pretty deep, but it didn't rid itself of the communist period. That it seems to me like Russians across Russia still look pretty fondly on the Soviet period. I mean, obviously World War II sucked a lot. The Great Patriotic War sucked a lot. But I feel like it's the Soviets that set the stage for modern Russia to exist as it does. So I'm glad to see that there's still that spirit of like pro-Leninism, at least. I don't want to speak on behalf of Russians in regards to their feelings towards Stalin. Ooh, just me. He's a Zionist and writes for the Jerusalem Post. Oh my fucking God. So he's just a smokescreen. He's just straight up just putting up smoke and just like, yeah, pay attention to this. Yeah, lobby your government for better education. Yeah, that'll get it done. Fantastic. Content writes, as far as liberal elections go, the funniest result is Trump wins the popular vote, but Biden gets the win in the Electoral College. That would be the funniest result, actually. You know what, man? I don't think that there is any result that happens in this next election that isn't going to be fucking hilarious. Right? Biden wins, and that's just hilarious. Trump wins, and that's just hilarious. Like, the whole thing is collapsing into a major decline anyway. So, like, whether it's like an old demented man who can't even remember if he's eaten an ice cream cone in the last 10 minutes or not, or some like just raging lunatic who just rants about anything at any moment, and it's like exceptionally good at it. You know, pick which type of dementia you want to deal with. Do you want to deal with this? You know, the thing about America is that America is the most powerful country in America, and we gotta make sure that the people of America always understand that America is the greatest America that America could yeah. Do you want to deal with that? Or do you want to deal with, we're going to go over there, we're going to look so good, we're going to go down there, we're going to drop as many bombs as we possibly can all across the land, it's going to be great, I don't care, it's going to be great, it's going to be great, we're going to make a lot of money, everybody's going to get rich, we're going to drop bombs all across the Middle East, because that's been working for the last 50 years, and so we're going to keep doing that. Bigger, bolder, brazen, like, pick your dementia. That's what you're getting. Communists are still highly thought of in most of Russia. Dude, that's the best outcome. Nova Scotia communists just hit it. The election is a draw, and they have to run it again. Absolutely the best outcome. For sure. Yes, but what about second election? Yeah, Muslim ban Trump versus Genocide Joe. What a great society, eh? What a perfect, absolutely functioning, completely normal society we're living in, right? What a place that's actually like totally and completely indicative of something that's working, right? Can't you tell? Can't you tell how well it's all working? I can. Boy, is it just humming. This capitalist innovation, man, it's just happening. Good opportunity to say like, share, subscribe, you guys. Hit the bells, hit the whistles. Consider donating to the Patreon. Consider donating to the stream. Always remember the most important thing, though. Let people know I exist. Tell people I exist. Spread the good word of the Canadian commie into the air around you. To I don't know. Let them know that there's somebody out there who's railing on capitalism, like, professionally. And, like, I am hoping that movements are going to become more local. There are local movements that seem to be appearing around me right now, and I'm steadily checking them out and seeing what I think of them. At this stage in the game, things have gotten so obvious that I think it really is just putting in the effort and putting in the energy. Like, things are so obvious and so clear that people aren't going to disagree. It's just someone needs to be the catalyst, and someone needs to be the spark, and someone needs to be willing to put in the legwork and actually do it. And that's what it's taking now. So this is me encouraging you to actually talk to the people around you and meaningfully organize. Meaningfully create a strategy to withhold your vote from the NDP, the Greens, the Liberals, the Conservatives, the PPC. Actively withhold your vote from those parties and find organizations or create organizations. Or if you have an organization and there's another organization, merge with those organizations in order to create alternative forms of power. If a system or if something you're involved with even starts to say we should negotiate with these capitalists, walk away from it and tell them why. Tell them why you've walked away from it, because we should not be negotiating with these capitalists. They're psychopaths. Their goal is to destroy us and abandon us. So negotiating with them is a lost cause from the outset. Like, it's over, right? It's completely over. DM, good to see you. Good evening, John. 10% of all national income is paid out to the 1% as capital income. Why not give it to all as a universal basic income? Or is it just because they're simply psychopaths? It's money worship. That's what it is. Like, people I think it's really important to remember, right? Like, we have fun. We have super big fun demonizing the shit out of the billionaire class and, like, demonizing the shit out of the political class. But it's important to remember that these people are running with the best information they think they have. Like, it really is. I can definitely believe that there are people, especially within the Liberal Party, who have just bought in to the rhetoric of neoliberalism. That they genuinely actually believe they're true believers, right? They're true believers. That they have a religious system that they think is a scientific system, even though it's a religious system of thought. And they refuse to actually confront that religious ideology, because to confront that religious ideology means to talk to people who have been considered unsavory. Everybody knows communism fails, even though it succeeded every single time it's tried. And so the rhetoric of enrich the very tippy top and it will trickle down, even though it's been discredited so many times over and over and over again, the ruling class doesn't actually have an alternative theory. I think that's the big thing, right? The ruling class doesn't actually have an alternative theory, because the alternative theories all essentially point at the capitalist class and say, you're worthless, you need to be depowered, right? It's not defund the police, it's defund the capitalists. Depower the capitalist class and transfer privately held industries back into the hands of the public, right? Like if you see that something's going wrong, the thing to do is not the thing that's going wrong again and again and again, right? But the ruling class doesn't have another mode of thinking, right? They're caught in a religious ideology. Like if it wasn't a religious ideology, right? If it wasn't just religious fundamentalism, they would see that it's going wrong, they would acknowledge that there's a problem, and they would change their strategy. But it's the fact that they are incapable of changing their strategy that shows you that they're religious, like it's a religious ideology. Like the liberals act essentially the same as the conservatives when it comes to economics, right? There isn't a difference between Harper and Trudeau's policies, right? Like you can, like the conservatives will of course critique the liberals, but like the truth is that if the conservatives were in a similar position, they'd act pretty similarly, right? Like it's not there isn't that much difference between the two. And so when you have this religious ideology that fundamentally says worship money, worship the self, and worship chaos, and then everything will just work out, right? Well, then you just continue acting that way. And the idea that you would take that money and actually transfer it into the hands of the people in order to build power, the power of the people, well, the capitalists are threatened by the power of the people. So they're never going to do that, because we have a central antagonism built into the society, right? And so, like, it's possible that some of them are not psychopaths, but they're definitely acting like psychopaths, because the system of capital itself is psychopathic, right? And so whether or not the people who are within that system of capital are acting out of a sense of zeal, pride, or dedication, or out of a sense of we don't know what else to do, right? The end result is the same, that the system is psychopathic. And as long as you go along with that system, then you're going to act like a psycho. So there's a long form way of me saying, like, yeah, they're fucking psychos. Mikhail says, this kind of hard line is too hard for too many, it feels. People are not willing to be tough on the people who pretend to be on their side. They have to keep giving the benefit of the doubt to both sides. Yeah, I think this is common, right? And I actually say this as a critique of leftists generally. Leftists tend to believe that capitalists and people on the right have the same level of empathy and compassion and humanity as they do. Right, so they want to. This is why the right has been able to get away with what it's been doing for so long, because the left feels this compulsion to engage and compromise and find justification and find middle ground, because of that sense of empathy, because of that sense of compassion and humanity. Right, it's and you see this throughout history, where leftists are constantly lulled into this position of believing one thing. And then, like, Not to say that Putin is a leftist, but I think this applies. Like the Minsk Accords, right? That NATO sat down at the table to do diplomacy with Putin after starting a war in Ukraine. And then Merkel basically came out later and said it was all just a scam. They weren't interested in actually abiding by any of the treaties that were signed in it was just to bide more time to arm Nazis in Ukraine, right? So there's a moment where Putin moved forward believing that the people across the table from him were capable of compassion, empathy, and basic humanity, when the reality is that they were just psychopaths from the outset. And so I think that, and I think that that's pretty common, right? I think people want to give people the benefit of the doubt, but when it comes to capitalists, we're in a place where we can no longer do that. There's literally no evidence to show that these people are capable of basic empathy. Like there isn't a shred of it outside of some weird little propaganda that they spread into the society. Like they're literally destroying the planet. They're literally destroying our ability to eat and exist on the planet. Like these people are psychopaths and should be treated as such. Like and we should not ever, under any circumstances, give them the benefit of the doubt, even a tiny little bit. Even a tiny itsy little bit. They've lost that right. Right? That if you begin from the position of, well, everybody has the right to have respect and all that, they don't deserve our respect. They don't deserve our compassion or empathy. They don't deserve any of that. They've lost it. They're psychopaths who are actively seeking the destruction of all human life on this planet. Actively, on purpose. And they know they're doing it. Like, you cannot negotiate with these people. Full stop. Eggs D writes, off topic, I find it hilarious how sick kids battling cancer occasionally have these donation drives, and this is treated as normal by people in society. Yeah, exactly. Just like total horror show. Why do you need my money to literally save this kid's life if you're supposed to be the most solid healthcare system in the world in a first world country? Yeah. Oh yeah, the healthcare situation is just, it's gotten so bad that most doctor shows, like you think about like ER or like any of these like doctor shows, and I'm seeing them pop up all over the place now. They'll have like episodes where a regular recurring line and a regular recurring theme in these doctor shows is a person cannot afford healthcare and so has to make a serious choice, bankrupt their family or die, right? Like it's gotten so bleak and brutal and obvious to literally anyone with a soul. So like 30% of the society is still of the opinion that people should die needlessly due to healthcare, right? Yeah, normal, totally normal, right? But you can see pretty clearly, like the healthcare conversation is where the fascists really reveal themselves. Like, I would say that Israel is where the fascists really reveal themselves and have revealed themselves now. But for the longest time, it was the healthcare conversation. Like, Americans are barbarians. Like, there's no culture there. There's no society there. There certainly isn't a civilization, right? You are withholding healthcare from people. Like, you're fucking vipers and vultures. Like, you should not be trusted. Nobody anywhere outside of America should trust a single American with anything. That's wild to think that you would include an American in something while they live in this fucking apocalyptic shithole that's actively teaching them to treat people like commodities and transactions. This is something I've really fucking noticed about what's going on in American culture, man. Everything is transactional now. Like, and that's new. That happened within my lifetime. That is something that's coming up from the new generation. Like, there was always this sort of sense around the idea that, like, yeah, of course, people are attracted to people with prosperity. You know, money is the thing, and that was always around. But I never had any problem at all talking to women, and like the thing that held me back when it came to dating was my fundamentalist Christianity and my conservative views. That's what held me back. And then after that, it was my stupidity, mainly, like looking back on it. But it was never, there was like the question of like my wealth and the question of how much money I had, like that just wasn't really part of the conversation. Whereas now that's the conversation. That's the whole fucking conversation. Everything is like how much money you have, drizzle, drizzle, sprinkle, sprinkle, like all of that. It's like the point of the conversation. And so it's turning the conversation into a transaction where everyone is everyone else's prostitute. And that's what's happening. And it happened very quickly, very, very swiftly. And it's not normal at all. Like, it's not normal at all. So the idea, like, we've trained people to view one another as commodities and nothing else. Nothing else at all. Nova Scotia communists, Putin, you can take the man out of the Soviet, but you cannot take the Soviet out of the man. Well, that's another thing to talk about. Like, sure, Russia went through a period of capitalist restoration, which I think cut a lot deeper than what's been going on in China, for example. Like, I think Yeltsin and Gorbachev were true believers in the project of capitalist restoration, which I don't think you can say the same thing of the ruling class of China. But but like the policies and the things that were implemented through the Soviet period still exist, right? Russia still has universal health care, right? Russia just very recently had a constitutional reform where they included the line, the minimum wage shall not drop below a subsistence wage. You don't have that here in America. That doesn't exist in America, land of the free, quote unquote. So so to say that there weren't benefits for the Russians throughout the Soviet period and throughout the communist period, I think it's just like propaganda brain at the highest level. Like, it's just unserious. Like, this is an indication of how stupid these guys are. This is the reason I wanted this one. Spotify CEO Daniel Ek surprised by how much laying off 1,500 employees negatively affected the streaming giant's operations. What? You laid off 1,500 people and it affected your operations? What? These guys are dimwits. Like, these guys are not intelligent people, right? Like, we've handed the reins of the means of production, and we've handed the reins of the military, and we've handed the reins of the political class over to utter dimwits, total frauds, complete losers. People who are literally saying out loud in front of all of us, oh, I laid off 1,500 employees, and boy, it negatively affected my operations. Yeah, it would, wouldn't it? What, like, oh wow, I took a big giant metal rod and I rammed it through my bike tires, and now I can't drive my bike. Well, yeah. Like, what? How do you think this is going to go, champ? What did you think was going to happen? Like, what did you think was going to happen? That these people have mistaken their wealth for intelligence. And they just do stupid shit and then go, oh, that stupid shit was stupid. And if you were to talk to the workers, they would be like, yeah, that's going to cause problems, dude. It's going to cause problems for these reasons. And why would the workers be able to do that? Because they're the ones doing the job. Like, if you remove me, who's going to do this thing? And if your answer is nobody, well, then the system's going to come down. Because that needs to be done. Right? Like, if you walk into, like, it'd be like the owner of a McDonald's walking into an establishment and saying, oh, you know what? We actually can get rid of all of the front of house staff and replace them with robots. Right? That's definitely something that will seriously and genuinely work. Right? I mean, 2 days later, the establishment is just covered in filth. It's just total trash and total garbage. Nobody's taking care of anything. oh wow, the negative impact of laying off all of my front of house. Like, yeah, who do you think was cleaning up the place, you dumbass? Who do you think was helping out people when they were like, I don't know how to deal with the machine because I'm a 98-year-old boomer? Like, who do you think's actually helping people and making sure the thing actually runs successfully, right? These guys are such fundamental dimwits, and we've just handed the keys to the city over to them. So we're in a decline, right? Because we're too stupid to realize how to do anything. SVBG, I'm forever grateful my wife chased me years ago. Modern dating seems like a minefield. Yeah, it definitely is. And I mean, my perspective of it is a little bit different because I'm older now. And so dating when you're 40 is different. Like, it's a different ball of wax. You're dealing with people at a different stage of their life. Near as I can tell, the best thing to do is to try to find like an actual like speed dating or like some kind of dating, like formalize the process a little bit more, because like I don't have the energy to pursue someone at a bar, right? I don't have the energy or the time to deal with all of that negative energy that comes your way when you do this kind of stuff. And because things have gotten much more transactional, and because things have gotten much more like, what can you do for me, right? Like, I'm a 10, what can you do for me? People are meaner, way meaner, like way meaner than they used to be. And so to get into like a formalized situation really cuts through a lot of that shit. You just meet somebody, you're like, I would like to date somebody. They've already confessed that they would like to date somebody. So you're not going to get hit with that, like, fuck off, you fucking piece of shit. Oh, what a pig. Oh, you pervert. Because you said hello to someone, right? Yep, big difference between dating when you don't have kids, dating after you do, dating after you split up. Yep, people have baggage. Like when you're a kid, you got nothing. You're just living in the world, right? When you're 40, you've got a history, right? You call it baggage, but like, you've got a history. There's like, things have happened to you in your life, right? And you just kind of have to take that as it is, and it's just what it is, right? For me, I also had a hard time with shyness and inarticulation, but now that I'm getting past it, doesn't matter. Big difference, yeah. Like, SVBG continues, I honestly can't even imagine dating, to be honest. Even meeting people who just share my interests is already difficult enough. Add in wanting to bump uglies, odds are slim. Yeah, but you got to be in it to win it. SVBG, you got to be in it to win it. Another big problem that I'm really confronting is that I do think that there are a lot of people, men and women, who are in it to like have a quick orgasm. Like they want to fuck somebody and never meet them ever again, right? That seems to be what a lot of people are doing, and that's like what the apps are all about. Like, that's what Tinder is all about. It's not about anything else, right? I made that mistake because back in the day, like I met my partner of 10 years on one of these apps. So initially I was like, oh, I'll just get back on the apps and we'll just do that. But everything's changed now, and it really did used to be like the purpose of these apps was to meet people and to meet people with the idea that you're going to have a continuing relationship, right? The apps today exist to facilitate one specific type of activity, which is meeting a stranger to have sex with. That's all they're for. They're not for anything else. And that is that's your capitalist innovation, which makes all the sense in the world in a capitalist sense, because the last thing you want a person to do on an app that's about meeting people is meet somebody who then means you'll never use the app again, right? So they never want you to meet your soulmate. They never want you to meet your one true love. They never want you to meet somebody who you're going to go off and get married to, because that means you're no longer using their app, right? So from the capitalist perspective, that's a failed business model. It doesn't work, right? We can't have people coming into this app and meeting somebody that they want to spend the rest of their life with and then leave our app. That doesn't make us money. You know what will make us money? A bunch of horny men and horny women hooking up. That'll make us a lot of money. And that's the culture that we should foster, and that's what we should facilitate, and nothing else. Right? And once you recognize that that's all that's happening on any of these apps, and it doesn't matter what app you use, that's what they're doing, you see how pointless they are. And there's no such thing as having a real, genuine conversation. There's no such thing as getting to know anybody. Everything is literally just basing your opinion off of a single snapshot. Literally put up one single photo, no description whatsoever, swipe left, swipe right. That's the whole thing. Like, it's shallowness it's shallowness at the deepest level. And like, I'm completely disinterested in that. Like, I'm completely disinterested in that. If I were interested in that, I would hire a prostitute. Like, for real. It would be easier. It would likely be cheaper. Right? If that's the game that I was willing to play and that I wanted to be involved in, that's what I would do. But I'm not interested in that. I want to meet somebody who is capable of seeing reality for what it is, or at least can have their opinion changed via evidence. That, for me, is number one. Right? I want them to be intelligent. I'd like them to be cultured, and I want them to be interesting. That's all. That's really what I'm interested in. I'm interested in having like, you guys think I don't talk like this in life? And like, so to me, it's like, it's never a lost cause. I just think that the reason why people are really struggling is because there isn't actually a formalized structure to it, or any system that exists to facilitate actually meeting people, right? Like, they're really, like, it's really is just like Meetup and like shitty dating apps. And when what we should actually have is like straight up, what we should actually do is we should take over the Legion Lodges. Right? Every town and country, every town and city in this place has a bunch of Legion Lodges everywhere that when you walk into them, they're basically empty, right? Most of the time. And we could take all of these things over and we could introduce like singles nights. Like, I remember there were things like singles nights where if you went to a singles night, it was because you wanted to meet somebody, right? That was the whole purpose of a singles night. And these don't exist anymore. They're not anywhere because COVID wiped out a lot of the bars and wiped out a lot of shit, right? So they don't have the luxury of having these singles nights anymore, right? And the but there literally just should be an organization that exists in the society whose entire purpose is to have like every single night, come on in, see who's around. Right? Maybe have like one special night, right? This is the big Sunday night. Come on in, right? It's a singles night. The reason why you're walking into this establishment is to try to meet a member of the opposite sex. Like, and make it explicit. Like, fuck, honestly, dude, I think the worst part of this whole entire thing is cold approaching someone and having that person just go completely psycho on you. Which didn't used to happen a lot, but now it happens a fucking lot. Like, there's a real sense of like, not only is there this willingness to do it, there's almost like a pride in doing it, where they're gonna like turn around to their friends and brag about how they destroyed some dude today, and it's like, I'm completely disinterested in this. Like, I'm completely disinterested in this creepy, weird little culture that has shown up in our society. So yeah, like, join a club, right? Yeah, something. But often when capitalism makes getting together hard enough, not being allowed to get together because you fall in love, as far as you can tell, makes it even harder. The idea that people just want sex if they don't fall in love isn't accurate either. It's more of a stereotype that fits sometimes, but also isolation makes us want to stay away from socialization that would actually benefit us. Yeah, I just think we're all wounded, right? We're all fucking wounded. Yeah. Yeah, I will admit the adult time with the wife has to be planned because it does actually take time. Yeah. It turns out that if you make everybody work full-time jobs and then they still can't pay their rent, everybody's too exhausted to actually, and too frazzled to actually have sex. That's why the birthright's in the toilet. Like, I know a young lady. I know a young lady who lives with 5 other people, and her apartment is straight up just her space is straight up a curtain in the living room. Yeah, like how's that working? How are you going to get involved in anything like that? Yeah. Cotton, I just want fuck buddies, men and women. Where are they? Who has their shit together and just wants to get off of people they feel safe with? Yeah, in a perfect world, Cotton. Right? In a perfect world, in a perfect civilization, men and women would just have sex with one another, and it would be great. We can dream. We can enter a fantasy realm where everything is cool, everyone's food and shelter is taken care of, work is light and easy, everything would be simple, there would be no capitalist class putting pressure on us to produce more, produce more. It would just be us existing and living on the beaches and in the fields. And we could just walk up to each other and be like, hey, want a bone? And they'd be like, sure. And we would bone, and it would be great. I dream of that for as well, Content. Not just for myself, and not just for those of you in the chat, but for future generations. That our sons and daughters would be able to engage in public casual sex and have it be completely fine. This is my dream for humanity. Yeah, and then you just can't afford it. Yeah, tell me about it, man. Like, tell me about it. Like, like there's this entrance fee. They've gate kept love, right? Like, they found a way to put a paywall on love. Like, that's what they've done. Like, they put a paywall on love, and then they impoverished most of us. Oh, I can't imagine why the birth rate's so low. Can't imagine. Paul writes, people talk down on the American healthcare system, but actually after going to the doctor, you do get the bill, but you will receive a call, which will decide with you in how many payments to split. Oh, here's a great video. Yeah, Paul's really in step with us, you guys. Paul's really here with us right now. He's definitely not in his own head thinking about other things. All of this conversation about love and sexuality and really existing in the human experience. I'm gonna shit on Canada. I'm gonna talk about how great America is. I can't take it anymore. You weren't there. You weren't there. You weren't there. Andrew writes over on Twitch. And reminding everybody, Andrew is from Russia. This is our history. Many Soviet movies were made. Music, literature, sports. We have a rich culture. It's religion, atheism, pagan traditions, a multinational people. We also consume Western culture, but we remember the Soviet heritage. Andrew, what would be a movie that you would recommend to everyone in order to get a good sense of Russia. Not necessarily the Soviet Union or communism, but just Russia. What's something that you think would really help people understand the position of the Russian mindset? The only Russian film I've ever really watched in my adult life was, oh come on, it's that 11-year-old kid in World War II. Come and See, which was a powerful movie, really, really powerful. So. let's address Paul's points, eh? Let's address Paul's points. Yeah, we talked down on the American healthcare system, dude. I had a colonoscopy. I have cancer in my family, right? Like, I have cancer in my family line. My grandfather died of bowel cancer at the age of 68, right? So he was just getting into retirement, just getting that all kind of figured out, and he died of bowel cancer. My father has a colonoscopy when he turns 60. They find bowel cancer in him, right? And so they get him into surgery, they cut it out of him, and now he's completely fine, right? No cancer whatsoever. And so when I turned 40, both my parents started to really get on my case about getting a family doctor. I've never had a family doctor before in my life, right? Because I've been moving around Canada a lot, and it just was never something that I was interested in really pursuing. But my family finally got on my case about it enough. I finally got a family doctor. I talked to him about my family history. He literally scheduled me a colonoscopy for the next day. That's how seriously he took my story about my grandfather and my father. So I went in for that colonoscopy. Simple procedure, no muss, no fuss. I actually quite enjoyed being put under, I have to tell you. If somebody wanted to put me under right now, I'd be a huge fan of it. And it cost me absolutely nothing. Not a single thing. It was easy, it was breezy, it was professional, it was efficient, right? If anybody tried to tell me we should defund that and privatize it, I would call them a lunatic. Because it's a lunatic idea that comes out of the mouth of a barbarian that doesn't know any better. Straight up just pearls before swine kind of shit. Like the family doctor who will told to hug a tree when you need therapy. No, my family doctor, if I need therapy, will schedule me a therapist. Right? Like, we believe in actually helping people. Like, if you need therapy or medication or medical help here in Canada, you get it. And, like, it's sort of weird to see somebody laughing at that idea. Like, that's what's so strange about this whole situation, is finding those people out in the world who kind of have this sense of pride. Like, that's the thing that's so shocking to watch. This sense of pride in the impoverishment and the desperation and the pain and the suffering. That's sort of the odd kind of thing. I think, Paul, that you are clueless. Like, I really do. I think that you have fallen into a kind of delusion and denialism because you refuse to face the truth of what's happening in your country. Like, for real, dude. What you just said there is demented. Like, observably demented. Obviously demented. Like, it's impossible to believe the thing that you just said. Like, it is demented. People, the number one cause of bankruptcy across America is medical debt. People are impoverishing themselves over this. It is happening in a massive and serious way. Huge sections of the society. The entire premise of the television show Breaking Bad is predicated on the fact that a school teacher cannot pay the bills for his cancer treatment. Like, What are you talking about? No, bud. Like, no, now we're dealing with your delusion. We're not interested in debating this subject with you anymore. Okay? Because you're obviously delusional. Like, what is it about this topic that has rendered you so delusional? Like, what fear is it? Why is it? No, what a total joke. Like, what a total joke. Like, where is this delusion coming from? Because it's just demented at the highest possible level. It's like the opposite of looking at early Simpsons as an example of how common owning a house was just for anybody. Yeah. Yeah, like it and what's so crazy is that it's simple, right? Like, Canadians on their way to pay 40% tax for the stuff they'll never... Like, this is classic, like, libertarian rhetoric that is nonsense. Like, I really need you to understand that. Like, you sound like a lunatic. Like an uneducated barbarian. Like, you don't sound like you're making any sense at all. Like, this is just babble. You understand? Like, it's deeply unintelligent. Because it's observably false. Like, obviously, Canadians have a universal healthcare system. We have a social security system that still functions. We have a childcare benefit that still functions. Like, our social system is actually beneficial, and it benefits our society every single time. We actually have a transit system. We actually have... Come on, Milo. What are you doing to me? The idea that, like, we're not getting anything for our taxes is a very American idea, because Americans get nothing for their taxes. American taxes just go to the military-industrial complex and kill a bunch of children overseas, right? So I can kind of respect a skepticism that says the government should be able to do. No, I mean, it sounds hard to hear because it's obviously and flagrantly false. Like, childishly false. Like you're lying to me that you didn't eat the chocolate cake while your face is covered in chocolate cake. Right? Like... again... Like... Man, this is what talking to a demented person is like, eh? Like, just dementia. It's crazy. Yeah, it's pretty crazy, dude. Like, I don't know how to continue. It's just delusion at the highest level. I've encountered this before, and it happens to, like, rural guys, where, like, they'll fall down this, like, libertarian rabbit hole where they'll actually take, like, frauds and lunatics and losers seriously. They'll like listen to Alex Jones and be like, this guy's making a lot of sense. But they're completely detached from any observable reality. It's just kind of wild every single time it happens, especially in the healthcare sphere, because it's so obvious. Like, it's so obvious. I knew the second I said transit, I knew you guys would start chiming in. I knew it. I knew that was going to kick you guys up. I knew I was going to kick a hornet's nest, and I've summoned David, so things have gotten very serious. Yeah, I mean, like, look, capitalist transit systems are always going to be plagued by capitalists, right? So they're always going to be bad. Like, started to love America recently. Like, I don't know why. Like, America is obviously, like, taking a hard fascist far-right turn, very clearly. It's committed really, really hard to a project of extraction and abandonment. Its culture of exploitation is getting more and more entrenched by the day. Like I don't really see what's there really to love about America. Like if you're rich in America, sure, right? Because you can kind of insulate yourself. You know, you just ignore the homeless encampments, you just ignore the poverty, you don't go to Skid Row, certainly, right? And you just kind of make up things about like, well, I can pay my healthcare bill, so I don't care if 80% of the society can't. Like, I don't give a shit at all about they just need to work harder, right? Just classic nonsense rhetoric. Yeah, Texas just unleashed the National Guard on unarmed college students protesting the genocide America is funding. Yeah, like it's just like there does come a point where I have to seriously start asking, like, are you just a fascist? Like, I think it's better for everybody if you just finally acknowledge it. But the thing that's so frustrating about, like, the Petersons and the Shapiros of the world is that they refuse to acknowledge that they're just fascists, right? Like, that's the strange and difficult thing about these guys, right? Is that they've is that they're espousing like fascist rhetoric, and in many cases just outright Nazi rhetoric, but they deny that they're fascists, and it's just kind of peculiar to me. Paul writes, left? What are you talking about, bud? Like, fascism is a far right, like ultra nationalist ideology. Like, it's about the privatization of public resources. It's about the destruction of social services. It's about the merger of the corporate power structure with the state. Yeah, I think that's kind of what it is. Like, or maybe he's fallen into that dim-witted trap of thinking that fascists are on the left. Like, I don't really like state nationalism and these things of fascism and holding up state power. Okay, yeah, like that's decent, right? So maybe you're just a libertarian, right? So just like mild social democratic safety net equals fascism. Yeah, like the helping people. That's the worst thing we can do. Don't you know that helping people has always led to hurting people? Dude, that's my favorite thing about the anti-communist rhetoric. Is it straight up just like, if you give people money, it'll actually make their lives worse. Actually. You know, did you know that we've done studies and it turns out that if you give a person a place to sleep, then somehow that makes his life worse? I don't really support communism. I think you mean or fascism. I don't really understand communism and fascism. Like, they're opposite sides of the political coin, right? Communism is about creating an egalitarian state where the basic needs of the public are taken care of. Its ultimate goal to create a stateless, moneyless, religionless governmental society that in which, you know, if you your well-being and freedom are maximized, right? That's what communism's all about. If you were to pin a single word to communism, it would be egalitarian, right? Whereas fascism is all about hierarchical power structure, subserviating yourself to the most powerful. Might makes right is a very fascist statement. It's all about individual responsibility, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, and acknowledging that someone's power and wealth makes them a better person than you. Dominance would be the word that I would use to describe fascism, right? So it's egalitarianism versus dominance. And I mean, fascists are not a joke, right? World War II was fought by fascists. I think this is actually a good comment. I'm going to assume this is made in good faith. Bound TRS, it looks like, on Twitch says there is a significant amount of assistance available for homeless individuals and addicts on Skid Row, but many of these programs require participants to abstain from drugs. Right, we moralize their homelessness and we moralize the position that they're in. Right, like we don't actually care about solving their problem. We care about solving our problem, which is that we think it's dirty that they're doing drugs. Right. Forget about just providing housing and letting them live in the housing, drugs or no, right? Forget about that. No, we're trying to solve our problem, which is our problem is that they're doing drugs. Like, we don't care about solving their problem, which is that they're homeless and they need a home, right? Drugs are bad, okay? And that's what we care about more. However, the challenge is that often individuals struggling with addiction prioritize their substance use over seeking the help they need to recover. Yeah, I mean, like, seeking help from a system that's actively seeking to abandon them, judge them, denigrate them, destroy them is a big reason why they're in that situation in the first place, right? I have come more and more to learn that I don't really care for the concept of what this society deems addiction. There's this real sense that people are just like hooked on it chemically, or they're attached to it, and there's literally no conversation that people are seeking it as a form of escapism from the hellscape reality we've created for them, right? And we've created a hellscape reality for millions of people, and so escaping into drugs makes all the sense in the world, right? Like, why wouldn't somebody who was born to an abusive father that raped them every single day and then threw them out onto the street want to do heroin? Like, I mean, it makes all the sense in the world that they would want to do that. Like, why wouldn't people who understand that all of their tax money goes to facilitate a major genocide overseas not be overwhelmed with guilt by that, quit their job and start doing meth, right? To kind of numb that pain and then escape it, right? Makes all the sense in the world. And if the systems that you're putting in, no, society's aim, like, look, this moralizing patriarchal idea, right? Like, I understand that what you're saying is coming from a good place, right? So he continues, or you continue rather, Bound. Society's aim should be to support individuals in overcoming addiction, helping them to lead healthier lives and become contributing members of the community. This is a form of moralization, right? You get to define the terms of their recovery. You get to define the terms of how they get to exist in the world. You get to hold their homelessness over them and put terms and services on their ability to have shelter, right? And so you withhold food and shelter unless they abide by your conditions, right? This is very condescending. This is very moralizing. Right, it allows fascists to basically pretend like they're acting nicely, but what they're actually doing is they're telling people who are at their most desperate, in the bottom of their lives, bend the knee to me and I'll give you this. Right, you're holding over them shelter, saying if you follow the rules you get shelter. Just give them the shelter. Just give it to them. Stop with this. This is just getting to be nonsense, right? Like, it's just moralizing at the highest level. It's condescension. It's judgment at the highest possible level, and it's using shelter as a bargaining chip that you withhold from people unless they follow your rules. You're not offering shelter out of a position of love or compassion or empathy for these people. You're using it as a bargaining chip to maintain your own feeling of power. And guess what? People who are doing drugs and people who are in this situation are not interested in negotiating with you. They're not interested in your power game. They're not interested in being condescended to. They're not interested in your patriarchy. They're not interested in that. That if you offer them a place to live, no strings attached, many of them will likely say yes. Some of them will still not, because the trust is permanently broken for many, and they won't return. Like, I have no respect whatsoever for a system that creates such an overwhelming horror show for the majority of the citizenry that then turns around and speaks condescendingly to those who seek an escape that is not suicide. Provide shelter for these people. No excuses, no moralizing, no nonsense, no bullshit. Let go of your hate. Let go of this repulsion and this disgust you have towards these people that says they gotta do something for me. They gotta do something for me if they want shelter. They gotta do something. They gotta follow my rules. Let that disgust go. Let it go. Give these people shelter. Skeeter sounds like a pretty... Like, Skeeter, are you just a fascist? Skeeter, here's what Skeeter has written. Everyone is responsible for their own ass. So it's just a total system of abandonment, right? There's no such thing as solidarity. There's no such thing as cooperation. There's no such thing as society, even, right? Is there such a thing as society? No, I just think you're too stupid to talk to, Skeeter. It's simple as that. Bye, Skeeter. Maybe gain some level of intelligence. Like, I don't mind if people want to come in here and challenge my views, but if you reveal that you're just a stupid person, you're too stupid to talk to, then we just get rid of you. Oof, Mikhail. That sounds heavy. And I mean, there is something to be said about this as well, which is that at the end of the day, right? At the end of the day, like, if a person decides that they're going to live on the street and do drugs, like, if that's the best game going, right? Like, this is the thing that, like, people don't want to actually admit or actually talk about because it's deeply uncomfortable, right? Is that many of these people who are drug addicts, they feel like that's the best game going. And that they take a look, like, they're looking at all the other games, right? And there's a bunch of different games around. And right, and many of them will talk about how they feel bad about how they're on drugs and they do that kind of thing and so on and so forth. Right? They have a sense of shame and a sense of guilt about it. But this is the best game going. And it's hard to fight that. It's hard to look at somebody who says that and go like, well, yeah, well, why don't you get on that grind set? What a fun game that is. What a useful game that is. Then you can definitely, oh yeah, no, you don't get shelter that way either. Well, Bound, I mean, that's a very revealing comment, right? Get high, live in a tent, or work for 30 to 40 years and live a meaningless life. Like, we don't really... Like, what's meaning? It's a very subjective term. It's a very subjective idea. Meaning. Like, I think it's such a personal kind of position. Like, where does meaning come from? How does meaning drop? Does meaning exist even? Is meaning even important in all of this? Or should we just acknowledge that we're just kind of here dealing with this catastrophe that we're all witnessing? Right? Agent Orange Gaming writes, a fash will always show the true colors. I mean, one hopes. It eventually will happen. But there are fascists in our midst that are pretty delicate. Like, I would argue pretty strongly that Ben Shapiro, for example, really outed himself over the Gaza genocide as a true dyed-in-the-wool fascist. But he's been sort of straddling that line for a long time, where people would actually be like, well, sure, he's far right, but he's not really fascist, and he's like fascist adjacent, I guess. Like, no, the guy's pretty fascist. Like, he was supporting genocides when he was a 19-year-old. You know, like a normal 19-year-old would, right? So I think that there are fascists among us. We're honoring Nazis in our parliament here in Canada. So it's like, I think that what happened is that the fascists revealed themselves in World War II, and the neoliberals realized that if they wanted to continue the project of fascism, they'd have to rebrand it. And they've been successfully rebranding it for a while, but now it's starting to fall apart. It's starting to fall apart, and the branding isn't working anymore. And the real fascists, the Nazis, are poised to sort of have another pushback and have a takeover again. And take fascism back from the neoliberals. Mikhail writes, my ex is denying me access to my kids, and the courts and cops are cool and fine with it. Jeez Louise, dude. I'm really sorry to hear that, Mikhail. That's an intense experience. That's an intense story. Jeez, dude. I'm really sorry to hear that. I hope you're doing well. This is the problem. Old people who have lost their minds don't have the free will you say they do. Yeah, and when you're a danger to yourself and other, free will is not the first concern anymore. Yeah, I mean, when somebody begins to lash out and start doing real damage in the society, then the conversation does change. That's true. Right? Paul writes, they've also rebranded communism with Canadian social democracy. What a joke, dude. Yeah, but you have no idea. You have no idea what communism is. Like, what's communism, bro? Like, what is it? Because if you think it's social democracy, it's like, what a total joke. Pan Chakaush. I do this every time you show up, dude. Panchakasha. I feel like I should be able to do this by now. You think there's a separate fascist group apart from the neoliberals? Yes. I think that they're not well organized. I don't think that they're like official and that they're big quite yet. But like the system itself has been talking about the rise of far-right groups all across. And like guys like David Duke have always been in the conversation, right? Like there's always been this far-right contingent that has sort of died out of the conversation because the neoliberals took over, and the neoliberals are economic fascists, right? That all of the economics of fascism exists in neoliberalism on a one-to-one basis. Like, the economics of fascism is the economics of neoliberalism. That what the neoliberals did is they acknowledged that the ethnocentric nature of Nazism was a bad line to go down, right? An obviously villainous line to go down, and so they created systems of diversity and inclusion, right, in order to try to reconcile the economics of fascism with the demands of the populace. That the populace was demanding more inclusion, more multiculturalism, more a truth and reconciliation regarding slavery, settler colonialism, all this kind of stuff, which the corporate neoliberal class, the corporate fascist class, saw as a benefit to engage with, as opposed to going down this racial purity line that Adolf Hitler really promulgated. And so the oh look, Paul found Google. But the trouble with that line is, of course, that you can't reconcile those two things. That the best you'll ever get is you'll maintain a poor underclass and a wealthy overclass, and you'll create a narrative of dominance that becomes primarily economic. And that what you'll end up with is you'll just end up with a couple of women and a couple of people of color and like a gay person or a trans person in the position of dominance. dominating on behalf of the capitalist class against the proletariat. So it doesn't actually work, right? But it does distract from the conversation of class-based conversation. And while that's been going on, the neoliberals have been putting Nazis through a period of restoration. Like Adolf Hausinger is like the emblem of this. Adolf Hausinger was a former Nazi who became the chair of NATO, right? So it's like a rehabilitation of Nazis, and they're turning from Nazism into sorry, Paul got me with that one. Gay people is communism. Oh my God. Jesus Christ, Paul. Like, come on, bud. It's just kind of embarrassing. And so while this has been going on, they've been going through rehabilitation of a lot of fascists and a lot of this kind of stuff. But now you're starting to see like white supremacist groups pop up all across the United States. A lot of MMA clubs are popping up across the United States. Groups like the Proud Boys, right? The Oath Keepers, right? Groups that have connections to the Ku Klux Klan, right? That we're seeing a big resurgence in all of this. And that resurgence is happening because neoliberalism is failing its promise. Right? The promise of neoliberalism was prosperity for all. Make some people rich and then it will trickle down. Well, it didn't trickle down, right? And a big reason why a lot of the Nazis, a lot of far-right Nazi-minded ethno-state people were going along with the project of neoliberalism, this diversion, inclusivity and all of this, was because of the promise of prosperity. Well, the promises of prosperity didn't deliver. And so now people are going back and saying, well, the promise of prosperity didn't deliver. The neoliberal era was a fraud. And so this whole idea of DEI and this whole idea of all of this is also a fraud. And our initial inclination, our initial idea of turning this into a white ethno-state is correct. And so that's what we're going to pursue. Right? That's what we're going to pursue. And so you see these groups rising up, and they are essentially economic fascists. They just think that they just think that they need to be in the upper class and that they need to be in control and that no people of color or gay people need to be in the upper class. And then the society will be better. Right? So it's small-minded thinking, which Paul is doing a real great job of showing us all that. Oh, did Paul actually compare gay people to pedophiles? Bye, Paul. We don't need bigots on the channel like that. We don't need anybody comparing gay people to pedophiles. Bye-bye. Yeah. You're no longer welcome here. Go read any book. You don't know anything about what you're talking about, and you're obviously a bigot. And it's pretty black and white. So go figure that shit out. Go work on something. Because boy howdy, are you not going to do it here. Get out of here, bud. Like, basic humanity. Maybe work on the basic humanity. Pan, I mean, it doesn't matter to me one way or the other. I think that if you're trolling, you're actually serious. And for people like this, if they're serious, they're also trolling. But it's one and the same, right? Agent writes, facts, as someone who continues to stay sober, I will forever remember that feeling of guilt and loneliness while working 40 plus hours and still having to sleep on couches or in my car. It was always getting shit on by government to just be shit on by people who should help. Yep. Like, it's a system of extraction and abandonment, right? Like, the system wants you to be poor and ashamed and guilty. They want that, right? Bounds continues, I lean towards conservative values and prioritize hard work and providing for my family. That's fine as a personal ethos, right? That is a fine personal creed that you have. That is fine. I believe everyone defines their own meaning of life. that disempowers the capability of the universe to completely fuck you over, right? Like this is where the break happens, right here, and you've articulated it very cleanly, and I don't fault you for it. Conservatives, libertarian types, will often believe, like, I'm going to say something that is going to put this in as starkly as possible, so that you realize how absurd I think it is. And this is from the Petersonian school. This is from the Shapiro school. This is the libertarian. This is Murray Rothbard. This is all these guys. That fundamentally what these individualist conservative types believe is that one single individual, that the power of a single individual can outweigh the power of all other individuals that exist, alive or dead, in all creation, that the power of that single individual outweighs them as well as all institutions that exist in the society currently today and that have ever existed throughout all time, right? Those two. And then also on top of that, that a single individual can outweigh the power of the entire universe and all systems that operate within the universe. That this is fundamentally what you are saying to me, and I cannot take it seriously. I understand that from a position of like personal power and personal growth and personal moving in the world personally, this is something that you see in yourself, and I don't think it's bad for that reason. That you need to move into the world with a sense of, I have empowerment and I am forward and I have goals and ambitions and I'm going to pursue those goals and pursue that kind of stuff with all of the vigor and power that I have. Well, guess what? Lots of people do that and they get crushed. They get totally crushed. And I don't mean they get knocked over so that they can dust themselves off and pull themselves up by their bootstraps. I mean that their bones are crushed. Their skull is crushed into the ground. And many conservatives, and I'm not putting you in this because I think that you're being very polite and lovely, honestly. Like, I really do. Many conservatives get very offensive about this. And offensive not on a personal level. Not on a human level. Like, they start to talk as if they are God's chosen child. As if their success is the success of God himself. And that if you are poor, it's because God has dismissed you. It's the most offensive worldview that I've ever encountered. And it's also extremely popular. So, as I move forward to the rest of your comment, please understand that's where I'm coming from. The universe is more than capable of grinding you up and crushing you into the ground. More than capable of it. I don't care how hard you tried. I don't care how strong you are. I don't care how healthy you are or how strong your bloodline is. I don't give a shit. If the universe decides to crush you, it will. And it won't even notice it's done it. If someone chooses to use drugs and live in a tent, that's their decision. However, I prefer that it doesn't happen near my home. Not because I object to drug use itself, but because of the associated problems that could affect my family's safety and our quality of life. I mean, this concept here, I mean, this is just talking to your neighbors, isn't it? That's all that is. It's just getting to know your neighbors, talking to them. Right? Like, what, you think every neighbor likes their neighbor? Right? Like, for all you know, the person that's living in this tent is a perfectly cogent, perfectly loving individual who's just gotten crushed into the ground. Like, you don't know anything about that guy. Right? And that's just the truth. You don't know anything about that guy except what your imagination has told you. And at the end of the day, Christ tells us to love our neighbor as ourselves. That's just the hard truth of it. And I would like to finish by saying this, Bound. You've been perfectly polite to me, my man. So I hope that I wasn't rude to you just there, really. Because, boy, howdy do I value people who come in here with like a conservative right-wing worldview, who are polite in the way they speak and are clearly presenting something in order to have that thing challenged by someone they disagree with. Boy, howdy do I value that. I think that's really, 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 really valuable, and that's something you should know about yourself. And I hope people say that to you. And if not, then I'm telling you right now, as somebody, and right here you've written, it's okay, we can agree to disagree. As somebody who stands in opposition to you ideologically, boy, howdy do I appreciate the way that you've approached this conversation and the way that you've come in here and the way that you've handled yourself. Really admirable, really stand up. So you should know that about yourself, that you're an admirable stand-up guy. Good for you, bud. Just Me writes, I watched an interview with the millionaire who tried being homeless to make 1 million. Yeah, this has really captured the internet. And maybe I should have brought it forward more, but it's just so annoying that this guy, Mike something or other, he went homeless he was a millionaire that went homeless to say anybody can become a millionaire in a year if they're smart and intelligent. It's just like the most arrogant shit of life. And he had to quit after 10 months for various reasons. There is actually tragedy in his story. His father died during this period of time. Like, it's actually quite tragic what happened. But, like, yeah, Just Me is writing it, right? The interviewer asked him held him to task for stating he gave up because of health of his father getting terminal cancer. Yeah, I must admit, people in that position can't quit, and others end up in that situation because of health. Yeah, that's totally right. Like, just playing up the idea that it was his dad, even though I think that's true, right? Even though I think that's true, right? Like like he's a person, right? He's a person with emotions, and he loves his father, right? It is actually true, though, and it's factually true. After 10 months, he was generating $10,000 a month revenue. Like, he reached after 10 months, he reached $65,000, right? Which, I mean, big surprise. Guy with like an Ivy League background who understands systems probably better. Like, that's not a personal success for him. You understand? Like, there are major systems at play there. Like, he has a knowledge base that the rest of us don't have. Like, it's not hard work and gumption. It's that he went to a school you could never go to. $30K in profit, still. And I'm quite skeptical about how he ended up finding housing. That I've seen this story play out before, where a guy like this will say something like this and then actually exist in the reality of homelessness, and then just kind of cheat to get the basic lodging, right? The couch surfing shit. And the way that they sort of presented it to me, that it's like, oh, he just managed to find a place to live all of a sudden, ha 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 ha. Yeah, right. Yeah, a cosigner. There you go. Well, you think these homeless out on the street, have cosigners? Like, ha 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 ha, he cheated. Right? Like, going from having a roommate, living in shitty living conditions, to $30,000 a year, right? Going that distance, you know what a much farther distance is? Homeless to living. Going from not having shelter to having shelter is enormous. And the idea that this guy, right, the idea that this guy got a cosigner, like, no. It's a scam. He cheated. Like, you know what that show would actually look like if he actually did that? Actually, he would be homeless on the street, and then by the end of the year, he'd be really good at being homeless on the street. That's what would happen. Because that's what that story actually looks like. Like, rich cocksucker finds a cosigner and a buddy to give him an art. Yeah, fuck off. Like, unserious story told by unserious people. Dewey Productions. Don't know if I've ever seen Dewey Productions in here. Good to see you. Hedonism is our default. Food, safety, love, and sex. I don't like hedonism as a word, right? Hedonism implies a negative when I think it's normal and natural. Like, if you take a look behind me, I've got a chakra chart here. So the first chakra, and I don't expect you to believe in the, like, magic of chakras. Like, it's a visualization tool, right? But the chakra system insists that we start in a place, as you're correct to say, right? Safety, right? Stability is where we start. The one that's right above it is fun. It's just enjoyment. And I got to tell you, I think that's perfectly normal. And moreover, I think that's perfectly fine. Right? I think it's perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine for a person to be like, boy, I'd love to have some fun. Boy, I'd love to have some enjoyment in my life. Like, what's the point of being alive if you're not having any fun? And I actually say to people all the time, right? I actually said to somebody fairly recently, hey, bud, are you having any fun? And he looked at me and he said, no. And I said, well, there's your goal. Go have some fucking fun. Go get laid. Go watch some comedy. Go do anything. Read a book. I don't care. Whatever it takes. Whatever has you walking away from it being like, boy, I had some fun. I laughed. I laughed a lot. Great. Because if you're not having fun, you're not really living. And that's the truth. Hey, Bound, this story you just told me, good for you, bud. Good for you. You're going to find, if you talk to me, I'm not one of these guys that hates on people's success, right? Because I do think that there are people out there who find themselves with the circumstances around them, and they do have the ability and the effort, and they can move forward, and they can do that. I am simply here to remind those people that within the wake they leave behind are millions who cannot and will not and were never able to, right? And all I'm asking is for a little bit of thoughtful compassion towards those who were not able to do so. Like, you're working at MIT, consult for NASA, right? What a journey you're on. That's so beautiful. That's so lovely. I'm so happy that things came about you to be able to propel you in that direction. And that your own initiative and your own effort were able to be aligned to pursue that. Right? There are plenty of people who cannot do that. For lots of reasons that are very much out of their own control. And that's my entire point. Is that it is inevitable. As inevitable as simply like a person who's on the journey that you are on, going to school, MIT, has a schizophrenic break. They're not in control of that. They just got to deal with that shit. And you think they're just going to go down that line, and there they go. Or they're on their school, they're on their way, they're working their ass off, everything's going completely fine. Their entire family is killed in a freak accident. They're going down. Everything's completely fine. They're struck blind. Like, these are things that happen and are real. And I want to live in a society that says to the people who are propelling forward and who are getting to that level, who are getting to the top of the chain, good for you. You did. You worked hard. You did all that kind of stuff. That also turns around and says to the people who could not and will not and never will, hey, you're here too and you're valid. You get food, you get shelter, you get love, you get compassion too. Are you sending people to the moon? No. But you're here and we love you. And that's it. And that's it. Dewey continues. That's exactly my point. Love and sex equals any other. Well, love, I would disagree with you on that point. I think love is a different thing. Right? Again, I refer to this. Love exists up here. It's a higher existence. Love is different. Like, love is not fun. If somebody described to me love as merely fun, like, sure, love has fun within it, obviously. But if somebody described me as love as the equivalent of fun, I don't know that I would trust that person's love. Right? Like, fun has a very fleeting quality to it. That love is a deeper thing. It's more important than that. Right? Sex, on the other hand, that's a whole other ball of wax. Yeah, and I don't care to use the word hedonism because it does have a negative implication, right? It implies an overindulgence. That's what it implies. Is that it's like adding greed to the mix of pleasure. That have so much pleasure that you get sick of pleasure. Like, that's kind of why I stray away from hedonism. That sure, we should be pleasure seeking and we should be finding pleasure for ourselves, but, like, you know, other stuff too, right? Like, other things as well. Like, not every book I read for fun, right? Not every piece of media I consume for fun. You know, not everything I do for fun. Mikhail writes, my point about psychological hedonism is that a term used specifically to explain that people are primarily motivated by a pursuit of pleasure and an avoidance of pain. Binary fallacy and oversimplification, yeah. Nothing wrong with being reductive, as long as we still discuss details. Yeah, dude, I can tell that Dude Dewey has a passion and that he just wants to talk about it. I'm getting that from you, Dude Dewey. You've got a passion and you just want to talk about it. Dude Dewey wants to... I know exactly what you're about to do. Dude Dewey wants to organize an orgy. That's what you're here for, Dude Dewey. I'm seeing right through you. Right through you. Transparent as the day is long. Bound continues with actually, I'm going to talk to you, Has a New Bookshelf. That comment's been sitting here for a minute. Good to see you, John. Good to see you, Has a New Bookshelf. How can you argue with a person who claims Russia was not justified to intervene directly in the Ukraine arena after February 2022, even though there's no other way to stop shelling from Nazis in Donetsk? Look, I generally tend to find that I just ask, what was Putin supposed to have done? Right? Like, really, really actually think about the situation that Putin found himself in a serious way, right? Really put yourself in Putin's shoes. He's got Nazis, right? There's a history of Nazism, right? 20 million Russians were killed by Nazis, right? He's got Nazis shelling ethnic Russians who literally, like, within his lifetime were part of Russia. Right? Ukraine was part of Russia for longer than it's been not part of Russia. He's got Nazis shelling Russians, ethnic Russians, on the Ukrainian border, the Ukrainian-Russian border, engaging in war against ethnic Russians on his border. The diplomacy that he's been trying to do failed. The people on the other side of the table admitted that they were negotiating in bad faith, just biding time for their Nazis to get trained and armed. Straight up, Merkel admitted it. And his own citizens are beginning to rebel against him. His own citizens are beginning to talk about replacing Putin because of this. that the opinion of the general populace of Russia is you shouldn't have waited this long. 8 years. Not insignificant. And so my response has just steadily become, what was Putin supposed to have done? Because the choice that he was given was engage in the military operation as the leader of Russia, or step aside and watch somebody do it. Because the people of Russia wanted to do it. They were not going to stand by and watch Nazis shell ethnic Russians on the Russian border any longer. So what was Putin supposed to have done? I've never had anybody given me a serious answer to that question. I've had some pie-in-the-sky bullshit come out of some communist friends of mine, but I've never heard anybody actually give me a cogent response. Why? Because there really isn't one. Because the response is, yeah, he needed to invade. Like, he was drawn to it. There was nothing else to be done. And the reality is that the people who drew him to it, which is NATO, are stupid. It's blown up in their faces completely. It's been a complete international disaster for them on almost every metric and by almost every level. Russia's economy is stronger. It's shoring up its alliances with the global south. It's a total disaster for the West. And it's completely their own fault. Like, they could have allied with Russia. Russia wanted to ally with them. So it's just fucking stupid what we're seeing right now. And so if a person wants to actually stand up on this idea that Putin shouldn't have invaded, the only thing left to say to them is, well, what should he have done? Because if your answer is nothing, well, then his own citizens would have deposed him and would have put somebody in who would have actually done it. So that's a non-starter. Right? And if your answer is negotiate peace, diplomacy, well, he did that several times. Right? And it turned out the people he was negotiating with were negotiating in bad faith. Literally biding time to arm his enemies. So that's a non-starter. That's a failure. So what else is left? Can't do nothing. Can't negotiate. What else is left? Bound continues. I really like this question. Are you suggesting that if anyone is left behind, it indicates a failure of society as a whole and that everyone must succeed for society to be considered successful? Well, first of all, okay, what's success? What is the definition of that? What does success mean? Right? Because I feel like people have a lot of different ideas about what success means. And because if what you're saying is that anyone should be able to become an astronaut, well, obviously not. Like, if that's your metric and if that's your measurement of success, then obviously not. Right? There's a very specific group of people and a very specific type of person that can achieve that. Right? But if you define success as everyone has food and shelter, then yeah, that's completely doable. That's completely doable. Everybody can have that. Everybody should be successful at having food and shelter. Right? And incidentally, my expectations are pretty much that low. Right? I don't actually expect that much from our society. Because I don't think our society is actually capable of that much. Like, we can provide food and shelter to everybody. And we could do it today. It would actually be simple to do. It wouldn't be this, the worst part about it would be listening to the capitalists cry. That would be the worst part about it. But we could do it. We have the resources, we have the ability, we even understand how to do it through mechanically. We understand how to do it legislatively. We know what legislation to pass because we've done it before. Right? During World War II, we were providing rations. Everybody ate. Everybody had shelter. Like, during the COVID period, we were housing people. Like, we know how to do this. We can do it, right? We just need to decide to do it and then do it. And that, to me, is the measurement of success. Is because I do think that every homeless person is a victim of their society. We have an overwhelming amount of wealth. We have an overwhelming amount of prosperity. We have an overwhelming amount of resources. No one should be homeless. No one should be hungry. No, everyone should have their health care taken care of. These things should be baked into the fabric of the society and should be considered a given. And if somebody stands up and says, no, it's correct that a person is homeless or starving or doesn't have health care, that person should be considered a bad person and should literally be sent to a re-education facility to be re-educated. Because we shouldn't allow people to walk around a civil society talking that way about their fellow citizens. Everyone should have food and shelter. And incidentally, that re-education comment, I'm dead serious about that. If you're seriously walking around saying that it is correct and right that members of your civilization and your society are going hungry and living in homelessness, then you should be re-educated. You should take a lot of time to think about that one. And to sit in a room with people who are telling you why you are wrong to think that way. And it shouldn't be a day. It should be a long time. So that's what I would consider a measurement of success. If everybody in the society understood that, yeah, food and shelter, obviously. What homeless? What are you talking about? Everyone should have these things. What defines adequate food and shelter? I mean, now we're just going to decide where the line is going to be drawn, which incidentally is something that any governing body should take care of. Like, we don't need to decide that right here. You understand? Like, right now we're just discussing principles, right? Like, you and I are not going to solve this problem. So deciding where that line is drawn is something that the body politic will do, right? Just the simple acknowledgement that people have access to these things in the first place. Yeah, food pantries and food banks. I'll read the comment. What defines adequate food and shelter? In the U.S., the risk of starvation is minimal. That's true. With numerous food pantries providing free access to food. Yeah, here in Canada, we have food banks. Their usage has tripled over the last little period of time for obvious reasons. It's sort of weird that there are food banks. The food bank system and the food pantry system is an odd thing to see, right? People should just have access to these things. That's what basic income advocates are all about. They think that people should just have access to the food distribution system directly. Of course, there are problems with that idea because the capitalists will just raise prices because capitalists are psychopaths, and that's what they do. Additionally, there are shelters available. The shelter system is inadequate, largely because they've been widely defunded. Here in the city of Toronto, for example, the shelter system is overloaded. There simply isn't enough room to shelter people. Moreover, the shelter system is no way to organize a society. They're literally barracks, right? They're just literally like a gym full of beds. It's no way to organize a civil society. You're not going to grow your economy. You're not going to grow your population base. You're not going to increase the prosperity of your citizens if your solution to homelessness is a shelter system. Like, it's just not. It's not a serious. It's an emergency measure. And incidentally, it was initially intended to be an emergency measure. It's just now become the standard. And it's not good enough, and it doesn't work, right? It doesn't achieve the goal it states to achieve. Regarding healthcare, it's provided at no cost to low-income individuals and the elderly. Those who are financially capable pay for their healthcare services. Bound, I literally just really reamed somebody out for talking this way. People get completely abandoned in the United States healthcare system, and I refuse to pretend like that doesn't happen. There's just story after 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 story and stat and news report of people who are going bankrupt paying medical bills, people who are impoverished their family because of medical bills, people who cannot get access to health care because of the amount of cost, right? Like, the evidence is overwhelming. So when you start talking this way about healthcare, it is delusional, and I get to use that word. It is outright and explicitly delusional. People become homeless because they cannot pay these bills. It's a serious problem. We also have Section 8 housing. I don't know what you guys call it. Basically, if you're family, you get a free house. Yeah, we have policies like that too. They just stopped being built. That's all. And it's the same with Section 8, by the way. It's the type of policy that gets put... Like, here's what happens, right? We're going to put in a Section 8 housing thing, and we're going to build what we call here in Canada affordable housing, right? So yeah, if you're a family, you get a free house, all that kind of stuff. The waiting list is 10 years to get one of these, right? And it's the same in the United States. The waiting list is about 10 years. So what happens is that developers get involved in this project, right? They get really cozy with the politicians, and suddenly a house that would take 2 months to build takes 2 years to build, because the guy that's building it gets paid no matter what, and he's on a contract. So he's, and because he's buddy-buddy with the politician, there's no incentive to actually complete these things. And it's actually to his benefit to lengthen out the project, because he can take that contract and then get a second contract. And so as long as he's got these contracts, they accrue over time, and then before you know it, he's just making money for doing nothing. Right? This is why infrastructure doesn't get built in America, by the way. This is the mechanism. That developers get in bed with the politicians, who are the ones that are supposed to be keeping them accountable, and then they create a buddy-buddy arrangement that greases the wheels for both of them, and they do it on your dime, and nothing gets built, right? Meanwhile, you glance over to communist China, and they're literally just like building infrastructure out of nothing, because they just don't have this negotiation with capitalists. They literally are like, we're going to build that, and they do. And nobody says, you can't do that because it doesn't make money for me. Get the fuck out of the way. And so these things technically exist, but they're completely inadequate, and they've been corrupted by the system of capital. Pretty dramatically, frankly. Pretty dramatically. Like, if they were adequate, they would be doing the job. But they're not adequate. And so that leaves us to ask why. Why isn't it working? Right? I advocate systems that work. Right? And if the system's not working, I want to know why. And I want to know what we can do to fix it. And I've been asking that question so often and for so long that I finally came to realize that the answer always was, every single time, oh, it's not making money for one rich guy, so it doesn't happen. And so I started to say, get rid of the rich guy. And that's why I'm a communist. Eggs D writes, I'm not well read on this. Is this re-education even possible? You're talking about some real hardcore Nazi shit here. Yeah, I mean, I would actually be really interested in seeing the success rate in the Xinjiang re-education centers. That's what I'd be really interested to look at. I don't think they'll ever release that data, because it's impossible for Westerners to look at that data as anything other than ethnic cleansing. But I'd be really curious to see that data, because the people that the Chinese were dealing with there were Muslim fundamentalists, Islamic fundamentalists, right? Like, I watched several interviews of people in those centers. Like, there's a reason why Westerners never actually show interviews with the people who are actually in these education centers. Because if you do, you realize very quickly that these people are fanatic religious Muslim fundamentalists who are literally saying, my goal in life is to strap dynamite to me and blow people up for the glory of Allah, and I'll get 72 virgins in heaven. Like, literally. This is what they say. This is what they believe. And they'll just tell you. It'll be like, what would you do if you were released from this facility today? Well, I would go find my compatriots out in the hills, and we would begin planning a project to execute infidels for the glory of Allah. Like, that's the people that these guys are dealing with. That's what we're talking about here, right? So it's on that kind of same level. And so I'd be very curious to see how successful they were and how successful that system actually was before they had to close it down because of international pressure. Well, guys, I think we've reached the end of this one. You guys have been wonderful today. But we're well overdue in terms of time. Always remember, each and every one of you is a quantum being walking around in quantum energy. These billionaires are spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the hopes you'll never realize it. You'll just stay the good little commodity they need you to be. Rebel. Revolt. Repent. Good luck.